got to pay $5, sometimes $6 million and above to get a 20-goal scorer in today's NHL. Sure. This is the best value that I've witnessed so far in a free agent signing. So hats off to the Blues. I'm with you on Jim Montgomery and Pius Suter plugging into a Jim Montgomery roster. I think this makes a whole lot of sense. And on a paper, you know, the strength of the roster on paper, this is a really nice ad.
That is the voice of Stu Grimson on NHL Network yesterday, talking about another move that Doug Armstrong pulled off. Just when you think he's done, nope, Doug swoops in for more. Yesterday, I guess it was at about 3 o'clock or so, we got the report from Chris Johnston and Frank Saravalli that Pius Suter was off the board. Unavailable. And T-Bone, your initial thought was?
Oh, that's the Blues.
That's the Blues.
And the reason I thought that was they're the team that wouldn't allow the number to leak. And I went, oh, my God, I think they just got Pius Suter.
So they did get Pius Suter at 2 years, $4 million AAV. Now, the reason that happened was because of what happened earlier in the day yesterday, and that was Nick Leddy being placed on waivers. Now, we officially have this breaking news, if you want to call it that. Nick Leddy has been claimed on waivers by the San Jose Sharks. Huh. Barclay Goodrow 2.0.
Yeah, we're just going to tinfoil.
Yeah.
You know,
yep.
I'll throw it out there.
Yeah.
I'm thinking he may have declined to trade to San Jose, and Army said, no, you're going to San Jose. It's just going to be on waivers.
No. Look, you're going to San Jose.
I'm just going to tinfoil that, okay?
Look, you're going to San Jose. We are either getting something back in return, or you will be going to San Jose.
We're either getting a 4th-round pick or nothing, and the answer was nothing.
So Nick Leddy goes to the San Jose Sharks. He's claimed today, which means that entire $4 million AAV is off the books for the Blues, and that $4 million AAV goes towards Pius Suter. So the offseason continues to move on for St. Louis with Tanner Hendrickson and Bradford Bruns. I'm Alex Ferrario. No BK today. Kicked off his 4th of July weekend a little early. He'll be back with us on Monday. My whole thought process last night once Pius Suter signed. And look, I was the one that did not want Pius Suter. But to defend myself and my own take, I said, I'm not paying that guy north of $5 million. And he said, cool, I'll sign in St. Louis for $4 million. And the Blues were like, what? Really? Are you sure? 2 years, $4 million AAV to the top centerman available on the market this offseason is another steal by the Blues. But here's the bigger thought, T-Bone. I believe the Blues just got back to their old identity that they had when they won the Stanley Cup. Big on the back end, deep down the middle, and versatile. Now, if you look at what they're at defensively, they moved Nick Leddy off of the books, and who knows what the rest of the defense moves look like if there's any more. But you've got Fowler, Parayko, Broberg, and Mayu all north of 6'1". The smallest guy on your team right now, defensively, is Justin Falk, who's 6 foot. Now down the middle, you are about as sound as a two-way centerman as you can ask for in terms of Robert Thomas, Braden Shen, Pius Suter, Oscar Sundqvist, and you've got 6'6" Nick Bjugstad. Jim Montgomery comes in with the team last year, has a lot of success, and I think the Blues swayed heavily into an identity that they had 3-4 years ago that said we are going to be tough to reckon with in front of our own net, and good luck going through our depth down the middle at center. And that's what the Blues accomplished with that Pius Suter signing.
Yeah, I think with the signing of Suter, I mean, it became clear they had 3 objectives, I think, this offseason that they wanted to fulfill, and I think the Suter one is the one that just puts the cherry on top of the 3 things they wanted to accomplish. One, we remember Doug Armstrong said, hey, we want to look for a 200-foot forward that can score, right? Yeah. And you mentioned it. Suter, very good defensively, coming off a 20-plus goal season in Vancouver, where he played as the number 2 center for a decent stretch of the season. Gave him 46 points. Okay, so check on that. Based on what Army said after day 1 of free agency, when I was there at his press conference, they clearly wanted to get bigger. Like, I mean, there's just no denying it. And you mentioned it. Defensively, they've only got one guy now that's on the roster that's at 6 feet, and that's Justin Falk. Everybody else is taller than that. And you've also got Bjugstad, who comes in at 6'5", as you mentioned. Okay, so check on that. And then they clearly wanted to get an upgrade. Whether it's for the short term, I think that's to be determined. But for the long term, in Mayu, check on that.
Yeah.
They just accomplished, I think, their three biggest things that they wanted to accomplish this offseason. And I love the signing of Suter because I was all in on the idea of bringing him in. And I said yesterday, hey, I would have given Granlund the 3x7 that Anaheim gave him. Not if I knew Suter was going to get this, right? Suter was probably my second favorite target on the board. And number one, if he was going to be willing to sign this contract. I love what they did to bring him in here. He comes in. He can play wing. He can play center. To your point, they're really deep up the middle now with their four centers. I think probably their deepest since maybe
they won the
cup
cup
run. Yeah, like I love what they did this offseason, bringing in Suter. He's going to be able to help provide a little bit of offense on that third line. I love everything about the signing. He fits perfectly like a glove for the St. Louis Blues.
The key word there is versatility, and we're obviously going to dive more into that as we progress here on the show. But to your point, Alex, initially, when I think about the way in which you can draw up these lines right now and versatility as well as strength down the middle, you have the ability, you now have that balance of being able to play heavy with playmaking to boot. And I don't think this is something that we can understate either, guys. Last season, now this is somebody in a Pius Suter right now with just 364 games under his belt, but he's 29. He has a lot of room to grow, to expand on his game. And by the same token, when this Vancouver organization, during that stretch, especially in March, was in a shambles, absolute dysfunction all over the place, he was arguably one of the most durable, dependable guys there. That's when he put 15 points on the board. He does so much for you from a two-way standpoint. And now, sitting here just 24 hours later, to think about earlier in the week when we were wondering, okay, the extent to which Doug Armstrong, is he able to make things happen to lengthen essentially that center position in just a span of 24 hours, and to do it at this number as well. The value, Alex, it's ridiculous.
This is the part that I just don't know how he did it. I really don't know how he pulled this off. Like I talked yesterday on the newer episode of the Last Minute Blues podcast because we had to record
it's not
one.
The newest?
No, it's not the newest.
There's a new one today?
Donnie and I had to do one this morning because, of course, the Leddy waivers, and then you've got the Pius Suters. So, of course, what's going to happen? Probably another move tomorrow for the Blues. But we talked about it yesterday of, you're not going to acquire this type of sentiment on the market for a reasonable price. They're going to get overpaid. Granlund's $7 million. Christian Dvorsky got north of $5 million. And I talked about the hockey trade of Bolduc for Mailloux, saying I think the people are upset about it is because Doug Armstrong just fleeces other teams in trades, right? Like, he looked human in this trade for once because Laterra for Shen, you had Oscar Sundqvist for Sundqvist had a first-round pick for Ryan Reeves, Ryan O'Reilly for Tage Thompson, Buchnevich for Blais. He always felt like he was robbing the other side. And then this was one, the trade for Mailloux and Bolduc was like, wait a minute, it's like, that's a weird trade, but sometimes those hockey trades hurt. Well, lo and behold, he's going to fleece the agent on the free agency side because Pius Suter signing for 2 years at $4 million, there had to have been more money available to him on the market. I don't know why Vancouver wouldn't have given him that type of contract. Unless Pius Suter just said, I want to go somewhere that I want to go, and I want to go somewhere that's going to get the best out of me. Because if you're him, and this is only my thought process from him and his agent side, there's going to be a lot of teams on the market that look at you and say, you just did it for 1 year. We don't know what you are yet. So maybe you don't maximize your contract. Go somewhere where the coach and the team is going to get the best out of you so that in a couple of years, when the salary cap continues to rise, you can go out there and fleece the market at that point. You're going to be 31 years old, and a 31-year-old centerman who could be 30, 40 points consistently, those guys get paid, obviously, in Christian Dvorak and Mikael Granlund. So I guess on one hand, it's as good for Pius Suter to go out on the market and say, like, I'm going to go to a team that's going to get the best out of me. But props to Doug Armstrong because, man, you're already, in my opinion, one of the top general managers of the year with this offseason. To find a deal like this on top of getting Bukestad for less than $2 million and then trading for a potential top pair defenseman.
Yeah, the way that Army had talked prior to the draft, it made it feel like they weren't going to be able to get a Suter because he kept mentioning, like, hey, there's going to be sticker shock. There's going to be deals that come out on day one of free agency. And, he even mentioned, I think it was on our show when he came after the media scrum and said, like, if you're thinking, like, this is what a player's worth, like, add 20% to that with this cap increase that's going on. And then you're probably just in the conversation. You're probably not even getting the player. You're just in the conversation. So that's how, like, when they signed Bukestad, I had the reaction on what day was that? Tuesday.
Yeah.
Where I was like, okay, so that's probably their third line center, right? The way Army had talked, it didn't really sound like they were going to be a team that was going to go towards the top of the market, and Suter falls into that. I mean, the projections had him getting 4x5, and he just signed for 2x4.125.
I know.
Which is wild. But that's why I think it was a shock to me, is the fact that he was able to get in Suter at this reasonable of a deal, because I thought for sure he would get somewhere around 4 years. Maybe he ended up settling for like $5 million less than what the projections had him towards, maybe 4.5. But even then, I thought, okay, well, the Blues will be out of that, because why? Because you got Dvorsky coming. You're not even blocking Dvorsky with this signing. You're not blocking with the Bukestad signing. Like, everything that they seem to want to accomplish, they've been able to do it. I mean, it's an incredible offseason for Doug Armstrong and what the Blues are trying to accomplish this year. I had, as much as I said, hey, I really like Suter, I didn't think there was any way they were going to be able to make it work, especially after the Bukestad signing.
I didn't think so either. And I think it was more so you couldn't afford that player. And to get Suter on this type of deal, man, it benefits both sides, because on Suter's end, it's a 2-year deal, man. If I don't live up to what I wanted, then I go right back to the market. Or if I outperform what people expected, I'm going back to the market and can get paid. And the Blues benefit from that, because we're not paying you much. We're paying you like what a fourth-line player is going to get in a couple of years in the salary cap going up. But we're also acquiring a guy that needs to perform to go out there and have success. And somebody on the Air Comfort Service text line, 314-399-9646, said, guys, did he sign with St. Louis because of the coach? I think that's part of it. We haven't heard from Suter yet, and I'm assuming we're going to hear from him soon when he talks with the media. But, like, if you're him, you just had that success under Rick Tocchet, who is a defensive-minded coach. You go to the market, like, you want to go find a centerman that's going to put, or a coach that's going to put you in a role where you can get the best out of the type of player you are. We've seen all of the write-ups on him of, look, he's slow. He's not the most talented with the puck on his stick. He's not the most physical player, but he generates offense because of his savviness on the defensive side of the puck. Man, that screams Jim Montgomery in St. Louis. So, yeah, I don't know how they pulled this off, but they pulled it off, which is the most important part. But because of what you said, T-Bone, I'm curious how they take advantage of the versatility for this Blues roster. I want to get to that on the other side, because I put a tweet out of what I believe the lines could look like tomorrow. And let me tell you, Blues fans weren't excited about that take. Also, with Nick Leddy off of the books, which if you're just joining us, Nick Leddy was claimed off of waivers by the San Jose Sharks. According to Puckpedia, the Blues currently have $1.5 million in cap space before Torrey Krug goes on LTIR. Could there still be more work for Doug Armstrong? We'll discuss all that next here. It's BK and Ferrario on your home for the Blues, 101 ESPN.
Start your day with the morning after on 101 ESPN. Get in the know first on everything St. Louis sports with Tim McKernan, Doug Vaughn, and Martin Kilcoy. Listen to TMA weekday mornings from 7 to 11 a.m. on 101 ESPN. The morning after is presented by Brown and Crouppen Law Firm. This is exactly where you want to be listening to us. It's BK and Ferrario on 101 ESPN.
It is by no means a boring offseason for the Blues. Along with Tanner Hendrickson and Bradford Bruns, I'm Alex Ferrario, which, by the way, our Graveyard Chat is live and kicking, so you can hop on over there. We've got Willie, we've got DJ Patty Cakes, Jay Bright, GB, Jeremy, everyone hanging out over there in our Graveyard. So head on over to our YouTube channel at 101 ESPN STL. Our studio cam is brought to you by Air Alliance Team. And, of course, you've got the Air Comfort Service text line at 314-399-9646. So if you're just joining us, the Blues put Nick Leddy through waivers yesterday. He was claimed by the San Jose Sharks today, and they signed Suter yesterday to a 2-year, $4 million AAV contract. And, T-Bone, we were just talking about this in the break, and somebody texted in. The grade you would give Doug Armstrong's offseason right now is what?
I would give him an A. I don't think it'd be an A+ because they do have a hole, but they've got a ton of options to try and fill that hole, and I think that hole is that third line right wing spot where they traded Zach Bolduc. But I would give them an A because of they went out, they got a project defensively. Like, I'm willing to admit that, but like it's also moved to where like this guy's got some serious upside to him.
Right.
MAU that they acquired in that trade. So I can get the picture there, and I like what they're doing, and it's a move that helps them potentially in the here and now and also in the next couple of years. I like the acquisition of Bukestad now that you've also added in Suter that can help you out on that third line. And that wing spot, like you can go through a rotating door of whether it be Bukestad, Sundqvist, Texier, whom I forget, Joseph, Dvorsky if he makes it out of camp. Like, they've got plenty of options there. And as we've talked about over the last couple of days, if you're looking for a winger, you're going to be able to find that guy on the market, right? If you get to the trade deadline, you're like, boy, we just tried like 4 guys. None of them really work, and we need a spot to upgrade. We've got plenty of cap space. They'll have, right as things stand now, about $8 million in cap space once Crew goes on LTIR. They can acquire whoever they want. You can go out and find a third-line winger at the trade deadline with ease. I think they're set up in a really good spot to make that kind of a move. So I would give them an A for their offseason so far.
Yeah, suddenly, I mean, you've got all this cap space and no concern over bad contracts, and you're getting younger on the defensive side. So all of the excuses as to why the Blues are a middling team is starting to shift the opposite direction. I'd give it an A as well because of everything T-Bone mentioned. But that brings us to the addition of Suter and Bukestad. The other factor into what the Blues have accomplished, in my opinion, is, man, you just made your roster as versatile as it was back in that Stanley Cup window era. And what I mean by that is you have Schenn, Suter, Bukestad, and Sundqvist, all who are centermen for you. One of those guys isn't playing center. They're either going to be a healthy scratch or they're going to be playing the wing. And Bukestad can play the wing, Sundqvist can play the wing. Those are 2 that I would imagine are going to be wing options for the Blues. Suter is a guy that was a point-per-game player last year in the final 30 games for Vancouver when they pushed him to the second-line center role, when they traded away JT Miller. So he's got the ability to play the second-line center for you if, for some reason, an injury happens to Thomas or Schenn. You've got a Bukestad who put up 20 goals 2 years ago, who can play the wing for you. And you've got guys who could play to the identity of the fourth line of big, physical, forechecking line of Bukestad or a Sundqvist. So I don't know how they're going to form this. In my opinion, I think you're going to see Suter in the center spot on the third line with Bukestad and Neighbors on the wing, and Sundqvist is your fourth line center with Texier and Joseph being the extra forwards. But, man, you've got so many options to play with this right now that it does remind me of what they had a few years ago when Barbashev could be a second line center or play the wing on the top line. Sundqvist could play the third line for you. Bozak could drop down to the fourth line and play to that identity. This is how pack mentality works when you have versatility from top to bottom, and it makes you a tough team to play against.
Yeah, and I mean, you mentioned like Bukestad could be on the wing, or like if Sonny, like if they start out the season and Sonny is the fourth line guy. I mean, you saw it last year. By the end of the year, he was running on fumes, right? Then you can pull him out of the lineup. You can slide Bukestad down. You can move Texier or Joseph into that third line wing spot. I do like the flexibility that they do now have, especially in the bottom 6, because last year we were talking about this in the office. You were kind of locked in with your centers. You couldn't really make another move if you wanted to. Like if Sonny was like starting to feel it, well, you couldn't really pull him out of the lineup because who are you going to play on that third line? You maybe bump up Foxa, and then maybe you bump over Walker to the center spot for a game, but that's not ideal. So I like the fact that they've added in not just flexibility, but, I mean, you mentioned if they do run with Neighbors, Suter, and Bukestad as that third line, holy crap, talk about a big line going after the puck.
Yeah.
I mean, good luck.
Who's good defensively, because Bukestad's not a liability. Neighbors isn't as well. I mean, Neighbors, they were playing with Thomas.
Suter was 99th percentile in defense last
Suter's
year.
game is defense that can drive offense because of it.
I like the flexibility that they have added to this lineup, and, like, we haven't talked about it, but if you have to, like, Neighbors can bump up and slide into your top six. I mean, he played in your top six for a decent chunk of last season till Snuggerud came up and was ready to go. So, like, if you do end up losing a winger for a game or two, or there is an injury, like, you've also got a winger that can slide into your top six. Suter, if Shen went down, like we've talked about this last year, like, what happened if they did lose a center? You were going to have to play Dvorsky, whether you liked it or not, and they clearly didn't think he was ready based on the way they talked and with their actions. So you were going to be rushing Dvorsky. Well, now if you did lose a Shen or a Thomas, you've got much more depth on the NHL roster to help absorb any kind of injury that may occur, to where you don't have to rush Dalibor Dvorsky's development. And again, as I said, like, sure, this right wing spot on this third line I think is a decent question mark for the Blues. If that's your biggest question mark going into the year, then I don't necessarily have that many concerns about the way that they have built this roster out, because you can go fix that at the deadline. And if you're losing games because you're quote-unquote third-line winger, you've got bigger problems on your roster than that.
Well, and here's the other thing. And I know it's not a certainty right now, but you've got a lot of third-line wingers on this team in terms of your pipeline. You got about 5 of them in the American Hockey League who could get a shot at some point playing the third-line wing for you. What you don't want is you don't want a top 6 guy playing the third-line role, because that's just not how it works. I'm sure they'd love to have Neighbors in the top 6, but they just don't have places for them right now. That's an area of strength, which is why that Bolduc place, our trade happened yesterday or a couple of days ago for the Blues. The other thing about this, too, is what Tebow mentioned a couple of times. It's cap flexibility. Jeremy Rutherford of The Athletic, our Blues insider, is just tweeting these out. Man, they got $8.6 million off of the books with 5 players, and they brought in $6.5 million in 3 players, which saved them $1.5 million, and that's before the Torrey Krug LTIR stunt. And I tweeted this out yesterday with the line combinations that people were pretty hot and bothered about. They subtracted 61 points from their roster with 5 guys and added 65 points with 3 guys in terms of Suter, Bukestad, and what Logan Mailloux did in his short sample size in the playoffs. So you added those pieces, you added the versatility, and this is the question that I continue to ask, which I'm sure everyone's asking. Does this mean Doug Armstrong's done? Now, I don't believe they're getting any more forwards. And by the way, Doug is speaking with the media right now, so we'll hopefully get an update and some audio from that in just a bit to pass along to you. They're good on the forward spot. They don't need any more forwards. Now, if they get one, it's probably another hockey trade, but I don't think that's happening.
Agreed.
Their defense is the part that I still would say, I don't know. I think they're fine right now. If they were to start the season, this is an upgrade defensively over what they had last year in terms of your top 7 of Suter and Leddy, and now you've got Mailloux and Kessel being into this rotation for you with Tyler Tucker being consistent. But I'm not trying to, like, create rumors. The Byram thing's still out there. The Byram availability is still out there. The Blues were connected to him. Do they find that being a fit for this team? They've got cap space now. I don't think they're going to actively be pursuing anything, but if it falls into their lap, it would not surprise me if Doug Armstrong says, this roster's good, let's make it great. And that's where I kind of wonder if the Blues still have another card up their sleeve.
Yeah, I lean towards they're probably done. But again, once we see some quotes that come out of this press conference that Doug Armstrong's holding now at Centene, I'm open to changing my mind. but I think they're probably good. Maybe they're in the mix for Byram. He's like the one move I can potentially see. But, I mean, you mentioned it. Like, if this is the defense that they run out there for opening night, where you've got your top 4 of Fowler and Parayko and Broberg and Falk, and then you have also added some upside in Mailloux to play alongside Tyler Tucker, they're going to be fine defensively. It's just a matter of how much do they really want to move on from Justin Falk, and how much do they want to try and make a move that's just like the Mailloux one, which is hey, this could really help us for the here and now, but also really helps us for the potentially next 3 years. And I think they believe their cup window, their next kind of contending window is, I'd say, 3 years away, in my opinion. Yeah. Because I think they're still waiting on Dvorsky to develop. come in with this core group of players that they have. And I think it's fair to say you're going to need probably 2 years before Dvorsky's ready as a legitimate top 6 centerman. I think a year development in the AHL, 1 year of development at the NHL level, and then, okay, let's hit the ground running and go. I think that's kind of their window, and that's where Bowen Byram could make some sense, right? You bring him in, whether it's an offer sheet, you trade for him, get him signed to a contract. He's a guy that potentially can play into that future, and you're younger on the left side, which is what they wanted to do in this offseason. That's the only move I can see, but if I had to guess, like right now as I'm sitting here, my guess is the Blues offseason is done, and what a hell of an offseason it was by Doug Armstrong.
Absolutely, and I know somebody just brought up, we'll get to the questions and answers, or I guess ask us anything, because today's our Friday.
It's the last day of the week.
We'll get to those in about 30 or 15 minutes or so, but somebody brought up that Doug's going to want cap space because of all the deals that they have to sign in the offseason. Well, the cap space that they have next year, according to Puckpedia, is $32.8 million, and that's before Torrey Krug goes on LTIR, and that's another $6.5 million. And yes, you have Holloway and Broberg that you need to sign, but the only other guys that you need to take care of, in my opinion, would be Toropchenko, Nathan Walker, Cam Fowler if you decide to re-sign him, and Logan Mailloux. And some of those guys aren't getting a lot. You're talking Broberg and Holloway being the biggest dollars with $43 million to work with. I think you're going to be okay in terms of what you need to do. So now it just kind of feels like you're in a spot that, look, if we can make the team better than what it is now, and it makes the team better 5 years from now, then that's going to be a perfect scenario for the Blues. By the way, our mic drops are available to you if you want to drop some in. Scott Lee Heating Company mic drops over on the 101 ESPN app, which is brought to you by Dobbs Tire and Auto Centers. Of course, if you've got thoughts, comments, questions, send them over via mic drop. Bradford Bruns is in studio. He's helping us get those piled together, and maybe we could get to some of those a little bit later on in the show. I mentioned questions and answers. It's coming up in 15, but coming up next, yes, we've got to get to the Cardinals.
Oh, man,
I know.
They stink.
They continue to get shut out.
They got an F for their last 3 games.
They did get an F. They got swept by the Pirates, but hey, the Mets did too. What do we make of these wild offensive swings for this Cardinals team? And it's not the good swings in terms of making contact. They're not making contact. That, and do the Cardinals consider juggling up the lineup? We'll discuss next here on 101 ESPN.
101 ESPN is powered by Kaufman Townsley St. Louis's injury lawyers. Call 314-500-5000.
can now watch 101 ESPN live on our Air Alliance Team Studio Cams. Catch every show live on our YouTube channel or at 101ESPN.com. 101 ESPN Studio Cams.
Presented by the Air Alliance Team Heating and Cooling. Getting the job done quickly, correctly, 100% of the time.
101 ESPN Sports Center.
Development camp drawing to a close. Good morning. It's Bradford Bruns with your Sports Center update, driven by Johnny Londoff Chevrolet and Johnny Londoff Autoplex. Blues prospects galore currently wrapping up their week of work at Centene Community Ice Center. Among those Blue Chippers, first-round pick and yesterday's show guest, Justin Carbonneau.
Every details in the locker room matters. Being a good teammate, we got some great speakers. There's so much learnings. I thought about bringing a book to kind of take some notes because there was so much, but no, just happy to be here.
Yeah. The note also remaining active in free agency. P.U. Suter signs that 2-year deal worth $4.125 million annually. He just potted 25 goals across 81 games with Vancouver. No further Cardinals action, meanwhile, until tomorrow's series opener versus NL Central leading Chicago. This Sports Center update was driven by Johnny Londoff Chevrolet plus Johnny Londoff Autoplex. See them at londoff.com. Chevy, together we drive. Are you kidding me?
They are St. Louis. It's BK and Ferrario on 101 ESPN.
And there it is. Tommy Pham delivers. And headed to second, puts on the brakes. Tommy Pham makes it 1-0. And a base hit for Tommy Pham. Another ribby, another run. It's 2-0. 3-2. He does. Mitch Keller. 7 shutout innings. Strikes out his 7th.
Well, that's what it sounded like yesterday and over the week. The Cardinals' brutal sweep, courtesy of the Pittsburgh Pirates. Along with Tanner Hendrickson and Bradford Bruns, I'm Alex Ferrario. The Cardinals get shut out and swept by the Pirates, and it's not looking good for this team in the losing side of things. They've lost 5 of their last 8 games, T-Bone, and in those 5 losses, they have scored a total of 0 runs. This season, the Cardinals have scored 1 run or fewer in 22 of their first 88 games. Last season, the Cardinals scored 1 run or fewer 24 times.
Ooh.
All season.
And I didn't like last year's offense.
Well, you don't like this one right now then for the Cardinals. Now, look, I said this yesterday at the end of the show that I'm not going to panic about this offense because we've seen this. They'll do this, and then they'll go score 9 runs against the Cubs in 2 of 3, and we'll all act like everything is fine. I'm trying not to jump on and off of this roller coaster that is a wild one. But you have to admit it's at least concerning. Like, this one wasn't even against lefties. Now, I know Andrew Heaney was, but, yeah, Mitch Keller's a good pitcher. Paul Skeens is a good pitcher, but, man, it's not that you're not scoring the runs. It's just the bats have seemed to lose the competitiveness. It seemed to have lost the ability to feel like the Cardinals were coming back. Now, one of those games, which was game 2 of the series, that was just bad base running. You put yourself in bad spots and you screwed yourself over in that one. Yesterday was just you couldn't get hits. But to sit here and act as if they can be a playoff team, I don't know. It just doesn't feel as warm and fuzzy as it did 3 weeks ago for this Cardinals team. And look, this series with the Cubs, it's a big one. So you need these offensive swings to go a different direction. I know you're hoping for health more than anything, but right now, it's hard not to look at this and be like, what's going on?
Yeah, I chalked this up to the Herrera injury. And the reason that I do that, and maybe it's not the sole reason, because this is a lot of 1 or fewer runs this early on in the season, as we're barely past the halfway point. But I looked this up this morning because I was curious. Okay, like how much of this has happened when they've been without Herrera? Because he's been on the IL for 2 stints now. Early on in the year, he had the knee issue, and then now, of course, he's on the injured list because of his hamstring strain. The Cardinals have been without Herrera on the active roster while he's been on the IL for 43 games this season. 15 times in those 43 games have they scored 1 or fewer runs.
Wow.
That is 35% of the time this season when Ivan Herrera is on the IL, they are scoring 1 or fewer runs. It has happened 7 times in the 45 games that Herrera was on the active roster where they scored 1 or fewer, but that's just 16% of the time. I think a big chunk of this is It's twofold. One, your best hitter is on the injured list, and he spent quite a bit of time on the injured list this season. So your offense just isn't going to look as good. And you don't have another star in this lineup, right? They've got a bunch of nice pieces, right? A bunch of good guys that are going to be about 10% above league average. But when you have guys that are about 10% above league average, they're going to go through stretches where they don't hit. And I think you're really seeing that right now. Like Lars Nootbaar hasn't really hit for the last month plus for the St. Louis Cardinals. Brendan Donovan starting to really go through it for the last 3 weeks. Victor Scott II, he's going through it as well right now. And it's not just against left-handed pitchers that those guys are struggling in. It's against right-handers as well. But what is so wild about the swings from the Cardinals is when we have conversations about teams that are very much go on this roller coaster of ride, right? Like where they score 6 runs in a game, and then when they lose by scoring 1 or fewer. It's typically the home run or bust teams, right? It's the team that ends up, we're going to slug for power, but man, when we don't make contact, we strike out.
Right.
And what's wild about that is the St. Louis Cardinals are just 17th in slugging percentage this season, and they have the 7th best strikeout rate in baseball. So it's weird that a team like this goes through these kind of ebbs and flows when it comes to their offense. And that's why I would just chalk it up to, I think their best hitter, their only hitter that's probably going to finish with an OPS above 900 this season is Ivan Herrera. He's out of the lineup. And I think that's been the biggest reason for these massive swings, especially over the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, I think you're learning the strength of this team that I thought was they're deep top to bottom to where it doesn't matter who's struggling, somebody can pick that group up. I think what you're really realizing is Ivan Herrera might be a massive piece for this roster, kind of like, and I know BK made this comp yesterday, Dylan Holloway was. Like, you thought that the team was a pack mentality, but you realized when Dylan Holloway left with the injury, boy, that offense and depth of line combinations really shallowed up. I think that's kind of the case for guys like Ivan Herrera and Wilson Contreras. This team is so left-handed heavy with their bats that if you take one of those guys that are right-handed bats that seem to be middle-of-the-order presence, whether it's Contreras or Herrera, everything starts to shallow up.
Oh, yeah, and all of that makes very interesting, even more interesting, Tanner, the stat that you mentioned to me before the show, the fact that somehow, some way, the Cardinals are just 2 games above 500, I believe, in the games in which Herrera somehow is not available. But to deepen your point a little bit, I do think there is something to be said about the home run ball and how that can, pulling a BK here, change the calculus for your team when it is actually grooving. Because think about what we observed, what we saw against, I'm just going to say it, a vastly superior, at least relative to Pittsburgh, Cleveland team last weekend. You had the home run ball going. You were playing on the road. You desperately needed a real representative performance, a bounce back after losing the final 2 games of that Chicago series at home. And when you do not have a complete, a consistent home run hitter in the middle of your order, and with all due respect to Herrera as well, I don't know that we can right now verify that he is that guy. But what does he do? He's a line drive hitter. He's going to mash it for you to some degree. The inconsistency is always going to be there. That home run factor, this team, I don't think that we're surprised by the fact that it's just 19th in Major League Baseball. We talked about this last week as well in terms of the Gopher Balls. When you have just 87 home runs and you're consistently searching for, pining for more production from that leadoff spot, Tanner, we talked about it earlier. Right now, Brendan Donovan, to say that he is going through it, that would be putting it mildly, because if your all-star representative, the would-be nominee, and the guy who's been the linchpin in your order for the entirety of this season, he has just 2 extra base hits, period, since June the 24th, that's the start of your problems. And to me, guys, it begs the conversation of heading into this critical series versus Chicago on the road, that is, with a couple of righties to begin this series at Wrigley Field. What can you actually do to attempt to basically reverse the mojo a little bit? I don't know. Do you plug maybe a win in there who's been a little better as far as generating some pop of late? I don't think Nootbaar's demonstrated enough in terms of getting on base via the walk to be put back in that spot, but you're kind of grasping at strings right now to figure out who's next, who's going to be able to step up.
Yeah, I think you answered the question. I don't think there's any, you can talk about juggling up the lines all you want, but you don't have any options. Like, all of the best players that you have right now with no Herrera, I don't know with Contreras. I would imagine maybe he's going to be back for this Cubs series, but I haven't really seen an update on that. Arenado's obviously dealing with his stuff. I mean, with 2 of those potentially not even at 50% and 1 unavailable to you, how do you juggle up the lines? You're just left-handed heavy. You have no righties that you can trust.
Yeah, like I wondered if maybe they would consider that, but I mean, to your guys' point, like I don't know what you do, because all the guys that are supposedly the on-base guys for the St. Louis Cardinals, they're not getting on base right now. Like, since the month of June, so going back to June 1st, their best on-base guys, you guys would agree with this, right, is Brendan Donovan, Lars Nootbaar, and then surprisingly, Victor Scott has an on-base that's close to Lars Nootbaar this season.
Yeah.
We all agree that's probably their three best guys?
I'd say so.
Okay, so since June, Victor Scott's hitting 205, getting on base at a 311 clip. Brendan Donovan hitting 214, getting on base at a 310 clip. Lars Nootbaar's hitting 169, getting on base at a 303 clip. You can't really juggle up a lineup when you don't really have a leadoff hitter to put up there at the top right now. And Mason Wynn's been pretty good since he's been moved to the 2 spot. He's been going through it, though, as well. 235, 278, 319 is his slash line. Their top 2 guys just aren't getting on base. And that's why I mentioned, like, would you consider a lineup shuffle? But there is no good answer. But maybe they just have to do it, right, to change things up.
Yeah.
Would you consider Victor Scott the second at the leadoff spot? Now, the tough part is if you do that, I have no idea where you hit Brendan Donovan and Lars Nootbaar. I truly have no idea. I guess you'd probably hit Donovan 5 and Nootbaar suddenly is like hitting 7.
Nootbaar has to be down. In that scenario.
But I don't think they're going to do that. They are just what they need. And you mentioned this, Bradford, and you've been mentioning this, Alex. They just need their guys to get back to being their dudes, right? They have got to get some of these guys out of these cold spells that has been going on now for a month. Because if you don't have 2 of these 3 left-handed bats that I just mentioned hitting, and you don't get a right-handed bat like maybe a Mason Wynn to kind of step up while you're lacking Ivan Herrera being out of your lineup, they're going to be what they've been, which is very much going through significant ebbs and flows and be an offense that just kind of is going through significant swings.
Yeah, and that's why the first 2 games of this series in particular are going to be very instrumental in my eyes, because you're not facing Boyd until the Sunday finale. You are not having to face an Imanaga he just threw last night against the Guardians. No, instead you get Ray. Granted, you haven't faced him a lot. You don't have a surplus of experience against the great Colin Ray, and then followed up by Jamison Tyone. And Tyone, over the last couple of years, look beyond the surface statistics, guys, because really, he's been walking that tightrope act for a long time against the St. Louis Cardinals. He's somebody who's susceptible to the home run ball. So in this set of circumstances, if ever your offense has an opportunity, the lineup has an opportunity to get right, or at least be able to create some superior results, it would have to be in each of the first 2 games. You've got to set the tone early.
He's Bradford Bruns, Tanner Hendrickson. I'm Alex Ferrario. Coming up in about 15, we're going to get back into the Blues. Did Doug Armstrong just have possibly one of the best off seasons, but also doing what the goal was all along? I'll explain in a little bit, but we do have a couple of updates from Doug Armstrong out at development camp, and we'll get to your questions and answers. 314-399-9646, or really, it's Ask Us Anything, because today's a Friday here on BK and Ferrario on 101 ESPN.
This Sunday, it's an MLB doubleheader. Game 1, Cardinals and Cubs. Game 2, Padres and Rangers. Coverage begins at 4. The MLB plays on 101 ESPN. you the picture, the real big St. Louis sports picture. It's BK and Ferrario on 101 ESPN. You've got questions. BK and Ferrario may have the answers. Questions and answers presented by Vantage Credit Union. As a local financial partner, Vantage puts your needs first. Membership eligibility required.
314-399-9646 is our Air Comfort Service text line. You can send us a text right now for Ask Us Anything, because we're treating today like a Friday, because we won't be here tomorrow. We'll have a best of show for the 4th of July. So we'll treat it like a Friday today until we do Believe It or Not. Then we'll treat it like a Thursday. It's a wonky one today here for all of us on BK and Ferrario. Also, our YouTube channel at 101 ESPN STL. Studio cams brought to you by Air Alliance Team. One thing I did want to mention, though, an update from Blues Camp. This is from Lou Korak, who was in the media scrum with Doug Armstrong's availability. As for the roster, according to Doug Armstrong, all it takes is one phone call, but it appears the roster is set. Other than one of the younger players pushing his way onto this roster, we don't expect any other big moves. Now, the fourth period did still have the Blues connected to Buffalo for Bowen Byram among 5 other teams. Take this with a grain of salt, what Doug said. This is our roster, because he said all it takes is one phone call. To me, read between the lines. Look, if Buffalo accepts whatever offer the Blues have, then they make their decisions barring. But for that right now, that's where they stand. And one on Dvorsky, which we're going to touch on the other side. If Dvorsky makes the roster, according to Doug Armstrong, he could start on the wing and doesn't have to be pressured into taking the center position because of all of the center depth that the Blues have right now. So we have a couple of thoughts on that. We'll get to those on the other side. Let's go to the Air Comfort Service text line, though. Question from the 314. Guys, they aren't going to do it, but say they did get Bowen Byram. Would Falk get claimed on waivers by a team? I don't think so. I think this was a special circumstance with Nick Leddy getting claimed because San Jose needed to get to the cap floor. I don't know if there's any other team that needs to get to the cap floor like the Sharks did. And this was a one-year deal that you could flip at the trade deadline. Falk is this year and next year at $6.5 million. Plus, I know that Doug really likes Justin Falk, so I don't think he would go on waivers, even if they got Bowen Byram.
Yeah, I think the only other team now that's not at the floor, and I could be wrong on this, is the Ducks, but they're in on Ehlers. Like, they've got other stuff in the works.
And they still have some RFAs that they have to sign, too.
Yeah, so they're going to be fine.
Yeah, because Chicago's over the floor.
I think you laid it out perfectly. I think it's different circumstance because Leddy was a one-year deal. It's only $4 million. It's not that bad. And 6.5, even in this market, it's not awful, but there's another year attached to it for Justin Falk. So if the Blues are in on Bowen Byram, my assumption is they feel like they must have a trade partner with Justin Falk, whether that is they send him to one of the 15 teams that's on his no-trade list or they try and pull a deal off with somebody that's not. I don't think he would be a guy that would get claimed on waivers. I think they would be looking for a trade partner to make that happen.
Yeah, I do as well. And again, all of this is riding on Bowen Byram, which this one from the 573. Guys, what are you willing to pay to get Bowen Byram?
That's the tough part.
It's the tough, man. So here's the one factor. You don't have anybody that's making more money than Thomas, Kyrou, Buchnevich on the roster player side. And you don't have anybody making more than Parayko on the defensive side. I don't think that matters to Parayko. If you go get somebody who's making $9 million, I just don't know if Byram's worth $9 million. And I don't know if he's worth a first and a third round draft pick because I don't know if he's willing to be here long term. In terms of what you've got to trade, the only thing that you're willing to trade on this team now is prospects. And Buffalo doesn't want prospects. So to me, if Byram happens, you're either trading Falk, which I don't know why Buffalo would want that. I also don't think Buffalo is on Falk's no-trade list that he'd agree to accept a trade to. And you're not doing waivers with him there. And then from there, I don't know. I don't see what you would have that they're willing to accept. So the offer sheet would be the only route. I just don't know if it's worth $9 million for Byram.
Yeah, that's where I am. I don't think he's worth the $9 million. And I don't think you desperately need him, right? That's the other thing for me. And to your point on the trade, they want NHL-ready stuff, and you already made your one move, right? I think the Blues could afford to trade one of Bolduc or Neighbors this offseason, or maybe Kyrou when they were exploring something bigger and better potentially. I don't think you can make multiple moves on the wing, right? Because then you're really opening up some holes on the wing on that third line.
Right.
Because I think your best asset that Buffalo would probably want right now is probably Jake Neighbors. And I'm not doing that move. I don't want to deplete that third line more. So I just don't see him making sense for the Blues, and I don't see the trade package that makes sense for the Blues to go out and acquire him.
Well, and this one from the advanced warehouse consultant, Nick Ehlers hasn't signed yet. Could the Blues be in on him and push Jimmy Snuggerud down to the third line? Could they? Yes, they have the cap space to do it. Will they or should they? I'd say no. As much as I liked the idea of Ehlers, this was before Suter signed. Now you got Suter. You're fine in terms of versatility. Let Snuggerud be a top 6 guy. You've got Kyrou, Holloway, Buchnevich. Like, these are the guys that are going to get it done. I just don't think you should spend the money or the years that it's going to be to get Nikolai Ehlers onto the Cardinals roster.
Blues roster.
Blues roster. Sorry, I was reading the next one, which is a Cardinals question.
He might help the offense.
He would absolutely help the Cardinals.
Yeah. I mean, it can't get worse from 0.
Yeah, he
3 games in a row.
Can hit a puck, that's for sure. I said Cardinals because of this. Guys, should the Cardinals get into the Acuna sweepstakes? He's got 3.5 years left, faces injury concerns, sure, but the Braves need a reset. Is there something out there that Acuna is available via trade?
I've not seen anything out there that he's available.
Do the Braves need a reset now that he's back?
Oh, I think they do.
Really?
Let me tell you what I think the Braves are. I think they suck.
Whoa.
They're dealing with all kinds of injuries with pitching, so that might be how they chalk it up. Man, they've been going the wrong direction for the last 2 or 3 years. And they don't have flexibility right now. This is why I don't like extending your whole core like they did, because now you're just kind of locked in with these guys.
Stuck.
Should the Cardinals? Yeah, they're stuck. Should the Cardinals have interest in Acuna? I just
absolutely.
I don't know that they're going to be willing to give up what it's going to take, because you're going to get this guy for 4 more years or 3 more years after this year. He would be the superstar you're talking about, and it's on a pretty team-friendly deal. If the Braves make him available, they should absolutely be involved in it. I don't know if they will want to give up what it will take to get him, though.
This is a generational talent. You can have Riley, you can have Olsen, you can have all of those different individuals. I don't care what you do with Ozuna. Acuna Jr., he is of a different breed. Injury concerns notwithstanding, you do what it takes.
I also don't think he's the guy that they will trade, because when they made the decision of do we bring back Freddie Freeman, it was kind of on the, no, because this is Acuna's team.
Yeah.
I don't know who they would move.
I think it would be Albies.
I think it's probably Albies.
He's underperformed from what they thought he was going to be.
Olsen, I could see them making that move.
I could see that. They've got Michael Harris, who's, at least performed at least somewhat better than what Ozzy Albies has. I think the team's core is Olsen, Riley, and Acuna. And I don't know why you would trade any of those guys. If they are, hell yeah, you should be in on it.
I just have no doubt that they aren't going to at least do something to amplify what they already have before the deadline. I know there are constraints, but this team by no means thinks it is out of the race this year.
They, for some reason, seem to think they're still buyers. I don't know what they're smoking in Atlanta, but they seem to think they're buyers, which is wild.
Let's do this last one, and then we'll get back into the Blues on the other side. Kind of a hockey question. Guys, now that Alex Pietrangelo is seemingly retiring, do you look back and say Doug Armstrong made the right decision not re-signing him? Absolutely not. I mean, you had Falcon Krug in place of Alex Pietrangelo, and you could have afforded Alex Pietrangelo from what you were paying both of those players. And in my opinion, you would have had a 1-2 punch of Pietrangelo and Parayko, which would have made you a cup contender still. You look back on it and say, I wasn't able to stay healthy, but look at how good he was for Vegas in those first 5 years of his deal. Absolutely not. I think that is still a deal that you go back on and you say, we should have got this done. You probably would have been in a Stanley Cup window for a few more years if you would have re-signed Alex Pietrangelo. And even if he's retiring now, he retires as probably one of the greatest Blues to play.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think, you look at the first, 5 years of that deal.
Yeah, because he has 3 more and he signed an 8-year deal after this year.
So these first 5 years of this deal, the first time the Blues were done chasing their tail, just this past season, right? They've been chasing their tail trying to upgrade this blue line for the previous 4 years, and they probably don't have that issue if they still have Alex Pietrangelo here.
Yeah.
And that's always been the move that we look back on as kind of the linchpin as to how they got into the position they were. Now, they would have serious question marks if he were still on this team, because I don't know what they would do once he got injured, because he would be still their alpha dog. But Parayko would be more ready to take on that role now than he was when that move first happened. But yeah, I'm with you. I still think they would look back on that and say, say, you know what, we probably made a mistake in letting Petro walk.
One more update. This one from Matt DeFranks over at the Post-Dispatch. Doug Armstrong spoke with reporters, but it sounds like the Blues are done for the summer and done at a cap position that will give them financial flexibility during the regular season when they put Torrey Krug on LTIR. So I think some of this, and I don't know this to be sure, but I wonder if some of this is, hey, Tom Stillman saying if we could save a little money, then that might not be the worst thing in the world. We've got a competitive roster. We're not going to be paying over the cap once Torrey Krug goes on LTIR. Because remember those bonuses that do come into play for Ryan Suter's season this past year. So according to Matt DeFranks, it sounds like that one is set. They're not going anywhere with it. But again, things can change. And by the way, Doug Armstrong is going to be joining the Fast Lane today at 2:15. So you'll hear from the president of hockey operations, who in our opinion just had an A offseason. Is going to be joining the guys on the Fast Lane at 2:15. Coming up next, though, Doug Armstrong did give a little insight into the training camp competition. Did he just open the door for one of their younger players to make this team out of training camp? We'll discuss that next here on 101 ESPN.
WXOS HD1 East St. Louis 101 ESPN is driven by Brown and Crouppen Law Firm.
Open your 101 mobile app for your chance to win a pair of 4-day passes for Major League Pickleball, sponsored by Stella Artois, July 17th through July 20th at Chaffetz Arena. 101 ESPN listeners can get a special discount on single-day and 4-day tickets by using the code WXOS. Find all the details on that special discount code and find that chance to score free 4-day passes for Major League Pickleball, sponsored by Stella Artois, right now at 101ESPN.com or on your 101 mobile app.
We're right back to more of it. It's BK and Ferrario on 101 ESPN.
So I think Doug Armstrong left the door open for Dalibor Dvorsky to make the team out of camp. For those that are just joining us, Doug Armstrong is going to join the Fast Lane today, coming up at 2:15. With Tanner Hendrickson and Bradford Bruns, I'm Alex Ferrario. It is BK and Ferrario here on 101 ESPN. So this was the quote from Doug Armstrong, who just spoke with the media a little bit ago out at development camp. We couldn't be out there because obviously we're on the air right now. But when we get some audio, we'll play it for you. But we could read this from Lou Korek, who tweeted it out. Doug Armstrong mentioned that if Dalibor Dvorsky makes the roster out of camp, he can start on the wing and doesn't have to be pressured into taking a center position until he's ready to do so, since the Blues now have Thomas, Schenn, Suter, Sundqvist, Bukestad down the middle. I know BK has been pretty adamant about how Dalibor Dvorsky's not making this team out of camp, which is why they've made these moves for the centerman. My tinfoil all along has been I'm not so fast to say that's the case. I wonder what he looks like in training camp. Because, look, man, you can change yourself in one offseason. One offseason, you can go from being somebody that's viewed as a defensive liability to being a guy that could play third-line minutes and score 19 goals. Zach Bolduc is who I'm describing here. I think that's the route this happens. Yes, you've just added Suter and Bukestad on top of the other three centermen that you have. If Dvorsky comes into camp, and to me, the internal competition is now Texier, Joseph, Dvorsky. Dvorsky's going to be told if you can outperform Texier and Joseph, you might have a shot at making this roster. Because then it's as simple as Bukestad moves to the fourth line. Sundqvist does become an extra forward for you who jumps in and out of the lineup. And Dvorsky plays that third line wing with Suter as the centerman. This to me has always been a blueprint of the Blues. You don't join the team and go right into the role that you're expected to play. You don't just make the Blues roster and you're a second-line center right out of the gate. No, you kind of work your way up to this. Neighbors was on the fourth line for Craig Berube. Robert Thomas played the third-line wing for Craig Berube and Mike Yeo. You had Robbie Fabry playing lower in the lineup before he was able to get up to the top six that he was in those first couple of years. This is how it goes. And if Dvorsky can outperform Texier and Joseph, then that's another offensive piece that you can put on the wing with a Suter and a Neighbors who isn't as defensively responsible, and then throughout the season is working with the NHL coaching staff to hone his skills on the center position, because you got 2 years before you need to worry about it, because you've got Suter, you've got Schenn, and if it doesn't look good, cool, man, we've got numbers. Go back to the minors and work this thing out. I think it really comes down to, can you outperform the other internal competition players in training camp?
Yeah, and this is the first time that I've at least seen Army publicly make this statement, right, of him giving him a chance to win a job out of camp. They've kind of hinted at it at the center spot, but not at the wing position. And I would throw one more name into that. I think Oscar Sundqvist will fall into this as well. Because I think if you, maybe it's not so much the competition on the wing, but if you can outperform Joseph, Texier, and Sonny, then you can bump Bukestad down to that fourth line. You've got Suter on the third line, because I don't think you're going to move. You're not going to play Dvorsky on the fourth line at wing, and you're not going to move Neighbors down to the fourth line. Mm-hmm. And now you've got Dvorsky that can play on that wing position. I mean, I'm glad to hear that they're going to keep it open, right? Like, I think it is possible that that's the best way for him to learn and kind of grow into that centerman spot, because it wasn't, 2 years of Robert Thomas being on the wing before they finally said, okay, let's push him into that center spot.
Yeah, it wasn't until that year they made the playoffs that he started to get some centerman work.
Yeah,
if I'm not mistaken, 2021, I think is what it was.
22. I can't remember if he was in 2021 because the bubble kind of mixes me up on if he was doing
21, 22 was when he took a lot of face-offs. So that's when he took over the centerman role. But prior to that, 3 straight years of him playing the wing.
So I don't mind if they necessarily go that route with Dalibor Dvorsky. To your point, he can be up here learning with the NHL staff, kind of getting into that rhythm of what it's like to be an NHL player, just the grind that it takes to play 82 games and working with the guys behind the scene on recovery and all of that stuff like that. I kind of like the idea of him, if he can win that spot. I'm not saying you just gift him the spot, because I'm with you. He's going to have to beat Texier and Joseph. And for as much as frustrating those guys were, those guys can be solid third-line wingers in spurts. But I do like this idea of him potentially being here, learning in that center spot alongside a Suter or a Bukestad, even working with Schenn at practice. Like, I am open-minded to that idea of them creating this wing opportunity for Dvorsky. And I don't remember who it was. we had a prospect writer on that talked to us. I think it was right after the World Championship.
Yeah, that was Stephen Ellis, or not. Yeah, Stephen Ellis from Daily Faceoff.
And there are some people that believe his best spot is on the wing moving forward and not at center. So at least when you do this opportunity, you can see what it looks like on the wing, eventually see what it looks like at center. And if you do decide maybe later on, you know what, maybe he is better off on the wing. It allows him to do better from an offensive perspective. You can then make that decision. This gives you the first sample size to look at this.
It's the common phrase in the NHL, and you've heard people say it, if not me, before. And it's easier for a centerman to move to the wing than a wing it is to move to a center. If you don't believe me, go watch Pavel Buchnevich last year.
Was it that bad?
So it was bad. The centerman spot can perform on the wing, and like Robert Thomas, that Stanley Cup year, he only averaged about 13 minutes a game in that season. But he was the winger. He had 9 goals. He had 33 points. And then the following season, he improved, and then he just kept getting better. And here's the thing that I remember having these conversations with Robert Thomas when he was 19 that first season. He said it was so beneficial for him to not have to play every single game. He said there were times that I was healthy, that they pulled me out and they brought me up to the press box to sit next to Steve Ott at the time, who was up in the press box, and just watch the game with him, look at tape on film, and figure out where I needed to work at, and then you could build from there. And here's the other thing with this Dvorsky side. There were some that wanted the Blues to acquire Ryan O'Reilly and say, put him at the third-line center spot because he's great defensively, and you could put Dvorsky with him on the wing so we could learn from that center. That's just a younger Suter.
Yeah.
I mean, he's 29-year-old, where he's earned Selke Trophy votes this season. He's viewed as a excellent defensive centerman, and Dvorsky doesn't have to go. He doesn't have to go in there and perform at that. There's a lot less responsibilities to play on the wing. Again, this is not Dvorsky just gifted this because he's a 10th overall pick. There's a legit shot. He doesn't look ready, and he goes right back to the American Hockey League. But I would almost bet you that Dvorsky will be with this team throughout the length of training camp, playing a majority of the preseason games. And if he outperforms a Texier or Joseph, then one of those guys goes through waivers, and it's no skin off the Blues' back. Dvorsky's here. He gets a look, and if it doesn't work, then you go back down to the minors, and you move forward the way it should be with Dalibor Dvorsky.
Yeah, I like the fact that they have. We mentioned flexibility at the 11:15 segment. You know, this continues to add to that flexibility. And if you see Dvorsky, too, and you say, you know what, after year one, we believe that he's a guy that can really help us out here, then you even have the potential to move on from a Suter or a Buchanan. None of those guys have any trade protection in those contracts, right? So that adds to the flexibility that you have on your cap sheet that you're able to do all this with, too. I'll be very curious to see what he looks like out of camp, because you're right. A guy can change just like that from one off season. I don't think he had any path to make this team at the center spot based on everything that we had heard about where he was defensively. But to your point, you take a little bit of that pressure off by moving him to the wing. There might be a chance that you can see a little bit of that offense flourish here at the NHL level while he continues to work on the defense for the next year or two.
Yeah, I mean, his shot plays at the NHL level, and whether it's a full season or half a season if he's up there, I mean, could he score 5 goals in the season like Zach Bolduc did that first year where he was in the AHL, got to the NHL as a third-line player? Maybe. You're just talking about, does his game, did he take the steps that were necessary in the offseason that you needed to? Okay, let's get to a couple pieces of audio, and then we'll get to the Cardinals on the other side. First, we've got audio from Doug Armstrong, who spoke a little bit ago on the Suter signing. So let's take a listen to that.
Just his versatility, I think, he had obviously a very good offensive year, his best goal-scoring year, but we think that he can come in here and provide us depth at the center ice position. He and Bukestad certainly change our center ice complexion. Have 5 natural centers now with Shen there and Sonny, so there's going to be some options, and it's always easier to move a centerman over to the wing than a wing to center. So we like our depth there, and we think he can either play with Holloway and Kyra if that's what the coach wants to do, or he's very versatile and it's going to give us some options and coach some options during training camp.
So there you go, Doug Armstrong basically saying what I said a little bit ago, which makes a lot of sense. But that's the strength now of this team with versatility. And here's the thing, like I know if you look at Bukestad's numbers from last season, it wasn't the greatest, but that was in a 4th-line role. This is a guy that I believe can put up 15 to 20 goals, and Suter just did 25 goals, but he's always a 15-goal scorer. I know people were upset that you got rid of 19 goals from Zach Bolduc, but you got two guys that could be 20 goal scorers. So you replaced at least Bolduc and added a little bit more from what Radek Faksa presented the team in the offseason.
Yeah, what he said there of their flexibility with the 5 wingers is what we are talking about, and especially like you just said, I mean, the ability to bump them out to the wing. They're going to have all kinds of different combinations that they want to play with. I do find it interesting. He mentioned there, like, hey, if maybe that second line loses, I mean, he brought up Holloway and Kyrou. So that was them saying, I think right there, Army basically said, we don't view Suter as the second line center. We talked about, do you look to upgrade over Schenn in the offseason? I don't think he was saying, hey, we just got our upgrade over Schenn. I think he does probably view him as, hey, he might be in line of what Braden Schenn is at this point in his career, and then we have 2 options at that second line center spot.
You go for chemistry. If Suter performs better with Holloway and Kyrou 5 games into the season, then you give it a little bit of a stretch. But at the start of the season, this is where I got into arguments with people on Twitter yesterday, which I probably shouldn't have. That's low for me, Ferrario. But why would you say Schenn's a third-line center for this upcoming season when Schenn was essentially a point-per-game player playing with Kyrou and Holloway? That line is staying together. Now, if they don't perform next year, well, then Suter moves there and Schenn moves down. But this is the versatility that you need. We do have a couple of mic drops, but I'm going long on time, and BK's already texted me that I'm terrible with time management. So we'll get to some of your mic drops a little bit later on. You could keep sending them over to us. Your thoughts on the Blues offseason and signing Pius Suter. The Scott Lee Heating Company mic drops over on the Dobbs Tire and Auto Centers 101 ESPN app. We're going to talk with Mike McKenna, former NHL goalie, in about 15 minutes. But coming up next, back to the Cardinals. Does this series against the Cubs determine if the Cardinals have any shot of winning the NL Central? We'll talk about that and Jordan Walker next here on 101 ESPN.
We want to hear from you. Text us at 314-399-9646 on the Air Comfort Service Heating, Cooling, and Insulation text line on 101 ESPN. is exactly where you want to be listening to us. It's BK and Ferrario on 101 ESPN.
So you get a much-needed day off for the Cardinals today before they start the weekend Independence Day series against the Chicago Cubs. And as it stands currently, following that 3-game sweep by the Pittsburgh Pirates, the Cardinals are 5 games back of the top spot in the NL Central. The Milwaukee Brewers are 2 games up on the Cardinals after they had some success in their recent series. So that brings us to this weekend. Is this weekend series against the Cubs make or break in terms of your playoff opportunities in the NL Central? Or if you believe it, which I kind of fall into this line of thinking, this is your playoff hopes. I'm not as sold as BK is that your best path is the wild card in the National League because, yes, the Padres, yes, the Mets, yes, the Giants have all kind of been sluggish lately. All 3 of those teams, in my opinion, will find a way to turn it on because they have playoff past. But also, all 3 of those teams, I believe, are going to be very aggressive at the trade deadline. But however you feel, this is the opportunity to either pull yourself back in within 5 games of that wild card, that NL Central top spot, or it's an opportunity for you to fall more than 5 games out of that top spot in the NL Central. And this is why I personally believe, T-Bone, this weekend series is critical for the Cardinals if they want to be in the playoffs. Now, there's still going to be a chance. I'm not going to act as if there's not. But you got to win 2 or 3 against the Cubs because it keeps yourself in the conversation of this team's not going to go away quiet, rather than you get swept by the Pirates on top of you getting the split series against the Cubs and then you lose a series against the Cubs. I think there's going to be a lot of people that say this is the real Cardinals rather than thinking they're a playoff team.
Yeah, I believe they've got 2 paths to the playoffs. So I disagree with you on the wild card picture.
How dare you?
Disagree with BK on the NL Central perspective of it. I think they win 2 or 3 here. You only pick up a game, but you've got the tiebreaker currently then on the Cubs because you have the winning record. And again, you would be showing them like, hey, we are still in this thing and competing against them. And you're throwing out like arguably your worst starters in this series. You take 2 or 3, to me, you're still going to show like, hey, we're still kind of in line with the Cubs. Sure, you're going to be 4 games back. 4 games back, you can manage, right? Now, we'll see what moves the Cubs make at the trade deadline because they're going to be all in. They sound like the team that might be the most aggressive out of anybody in the National League. But all it takes is 1 injury, right? Kyle Tucker fouls the ball off his foot.
Well, if you're the Cardinals, it takes 1 injury. The Cubs lost their best pitcher. And I
think the Cubs are in that range as well because we talked about this when they played them last go-around. I feel like the offense are kind of the same, except the Cubs have a superstar in it, right? And they've had a young bat really take that next step like Pete Crow Armstrong. That's one thing the Cardinals don't have. But I think you take 2 or 3 in this series, the NL Central is still in play. Now, it's still 4 games. It's going to be a little tough to make that up. But I still believe the Central will be in play. And I think the wild card, I think they're just going to be in the wild card race this whole time. Like, I don't know if San Diego's going to be as aggressive as we think because their pipeline is so depleted from A.J. Preller's trading sprees over the last, 4 years.
That's very true.
And outside of them, sure, the Mets will be aggressive. They'll be able to make moves. Milwaukee, I don't think is going to be making those moves. San Fran, we'll see. They might have already made their big splash in Rafi Devers, who, by the way, is hitting 200 since he got there and is striking out a ton. Reds aren't going to be overly aggressive. Then outside of that, Arizona and Atlanta could be sellers. So I think they've still got the 2 paths. Now, they dropped 2 of 3 this week, and they will be 6 games back of the Cubs, currently behind in the tiebreaker. I think then it's okay to say, you know what, maybe the NL Central is not their path, and they do need to focus on the wild card. But I think that's only if they drop 2 of 3 or get swept in this series.
I would never cast aside the wild card hopes and aspirations, but I truly believe, I firmly believe this is make it or break it for the division. If you drop 2 of 3, heaven forbid you get swept there in the Windy City over Independence Day weekend, because not necessarily on the offensive side. Tanner, you do make a good point, I think, insofar as really these 2 offenses, they are comparable for long stretches, right? And I, for one, question what we're going to see in the second half from Crow Armstrong. Is he still, yes, that burgeoning star? Absolutely. But I rely a lot less on him in the second half to basically replicate the performance as I would say for a Kyle Tucker. But number one, because the Cubs, that rotation, Alex, you referenced obviously down the number 1 pitcher at the beginning of the season, Steele, his elbow blew up. But now there is more continuity in the rotation as it is, because not only do you have Matthew Boyd throwing like an all-star, your literal all-star from last season, Imanaga, is back, and he's going to do nothing but actually build up the endurance and the durability there. So it's a funky stretch for Chicago. Honestly, guys, not until the last weekend in July does Chicago, after St. Louis, face another National League squad. Instead, you've got Minnesota on the road. You go to New York, in the Bronx. And then after the All-Star break, too, you have Boston, you have Kansas City, and the also-ran team there from the South Side. But I don't see this team going away. If anything, I see the front office fortifying the offense, fortifying the pitching with more investments. That's what they're going to do.
And if you can take 2 or 3 in this series from the Cubs, and look, I'm not acting like it is going to be easy. I mean, they are in a bad offensive funk. They've got guys that have been dealing with nagging stuff. My hope is that the off day kind of gets everybody 48 hours to reset with Contreras and Nolan Arenado. But BK brought this up about the Cardinals' schedule, of how it kind of eases up once you get past this Cubs series. You look at what the Cardinals have got the rest of July after the Cubs. 3 at home against Washington, 3 at home against the Braves, who, again, I think are more name than anything.
Yeah, I'm with you.
Then they got the All-Star break, and then they're at Arizona. Again, more name right now than anything. They're behind you in the wild card standings. Then at Colorado. San Diego will be tough. Then Miami, who's playing good ball. But Miami's not a good team, and by that point, I expect them to cool off. So really, we're talking about like one playoff series there against San Diego. Maybe Arizona I had thrown to that. This is what the Cubs' schedule looks like after the Cardinals series. 3 at Minnesota, 3 at the New York Yankees. Then they get the All-Star break. And then they've got the Boston Red Sox, Kansas City Royals, at the White Sox, and then at the Brewers. They've got a tougher schedule, in my opinion, coming out of the break than the St. Louis Cardinals. This could be the month that you can make up some ground. You take 2 of 3, you gain a game in the standings, and then you hopefully take care of your business. There's an opportunity for you to really close that gap by the time you get to that July 31st trade deadline. So, but again, that starts with taking care of business this week, and you've got to find a way to right the ship going up to Chicago, and then I think they can really make things interesting with a good month of July.
Yeah, and that was kind of, you guys answered it. My kind of question is more so, will the front office view this as they're still a playoff team, depending on what happens with the series? But you're right, the schedule does allow for it and makes things a little bit more difficult for the Cubs. And frankly, I don't think this team's going to make any decisions until the day of deadline, because they're going to wait to see kind of what teams really get desperate for in terms of their roster. Speaking of their roster, I guess you kind of have to ask the question right now, what's the role for Jordan Walker? Like, if they were that desperate for a right-handed bat, I know Walker hasn't been great, but you'd think they might try and get him back here rather than the rehab stint. But he's going on the rehab stint for Springfield. But, man, I don't know where he falls into their thought process when he returns, because, I mean, obviously the injuries play into some of this, and maybe they need more time off for Nootbaar, and that helps a little bit. Burleson's in that outfield every single day. Frankly, it still seems like Nolan Gorman's going to be in there a lot. Like, injuries will play into this somewhat, but man, I personally feel like, and I don't like it, Walker's runway, it might be closed by the time he comes back, or at least by the time they exit the All-Star break.
I think it's already closed. I mean, it was closed while he was on the roster, right? He was kind of the odd man out.
That's true.
I think he's just going to be a bench bat for them, because they can say, hey, well, we need this right-handed bat for when lefties are pitching. He's not good against lefties. He's worse against lefties in his career than he is against right-handed pitching so far. So he's not the right-handed bat that's coming to save the Cardinals against left-handed starters. I made this case on the Redbird Report yesterday. I think they should call up Luke and Baker to help them against lefties right now. They've got a ton of flexibility, right? You keep Garrett Hampson on the roster. He's a guy that can play outfield and infield for you, so you've got that flexibility. You send down Fermin, boom, I've got Luke and Baker up here. I think that makes the most sense for them to help against left-handed pitchers while Walker is out, and then we'll get there when Walker comes back. But I just think he's a bench bat. I don't think he's getting runway, because they are now in the month. If there was one month so far this season that should be determined as the competing month, doing whatever it is to win baseball games, July's the month, because July's the month that determines if the Cardinals are buyers or sellers at this year's trade deadline.
It doesn't make any sense whatsoever to shoehorn him into the starting lineup against left-handed pitching, against which he, number one, hasn't been very good in the first place. But when you only have 2 on the schedule up into the All-Star break, what's it going to be? This coming Sunday, he's not going to be back for that one against Boyd and then Mackenzie Gore. Otherwise, you're facing nothing but righties anyway.
All right, we're late on Our time, that's on me. We got to get to Mike McKenna. Former NHL goalie is going to talk all the Blues offseason moves next here on 101 ESPN.
101 ESPN is powered by Kaufman Townsley St. Louis's injury lawyers. Call 314-500-5000.
Spread Zone, where sports betting meets reckless optimism, questionable logic, and the occasional stroke of genius. With hosts Anthony Stalter, Tim McKernan, and Scott Rizzuto. Check out the latest from the Spread Zone at 101ESPN.com or the 101 mobile app. The Spread Zone is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. Make every moment more. 101 ESPN Sports Center.
Note nabbing that additional center. I'm Bradford Bruns. This Sports Center update is powered by Saliga Heating and Cooling. Yesterday afternoon, former Vancouver forward Pirou Suter signed a 2-year, $8.25 million contract with St. Louis. Last season saw him tally a career-high 25 goals plus 46 points over 81 games. The 29-year-old joins Nick Bukestad as a new forward option for Jim Montgomery. Staying up front, first-round pick Justin Carbonneau's among those, receiving reps throughout Blues development camp. Number 68 already loves some physicality.
I know it might look dumb, but I play a little bit like a running back. I don't just throw hits, but everything I do it hard. I don't play outside dots. I score goals. I have a good shot and a good vision, but it's all inside dots, and I think this is where the goals are scored.
Meanwhile, no potential hits baseball-wise until tomorrow when NL Central Best Chicago will host Ali Marmol's Cardinals. Your Sports Center update was presented by Saliga Heating and Cooling, a Daikin heating and air conditioning dealer.
We're going between the pipes with former NHL goaltender Mike McKenna.
Mike McKenna. How do you like me now?
Between the Pipes is refreshed by Macadoodle Spirits, fine wine, beer, and cigars. Now open in Darden Prairie.
Well, we're treating our Thursday like our Friday, which means we are catching up with former NHL goaltender Mike McKenna. And last week I said, Mike, I hope we're talking about a lot of moves by the Blues once offseason opens up. And Mike, we are going to be talking about a lot of offseason moves for this Blues team. How are you, buddy?
Oh, I'm doing all right, man. We had some moves, and it feels like Friday, so let's get to it, man. This was a kind of interesting couple days, wasn't it, fellas?
It absolutely was. And Mike, just broad picture here, do you feel like this team improved with all of these moves that have taken place compared to what the team was last year?
Oh, there's a lot of wait and see here. I'm not completely sure that the Bolduc move doesn't have any downstream effect that we're going to see before the puck drops. I do like the move that the Blues, of all things, I'm going to say I like bringing in Nick Bjugstad. Okay, so I know it's a minor piece that should be able to help, but still Radek Faksa was so good for the team. Is Bjugstad an upgrade from Faksa? No. Kind of parallel, different hands. Faksa left-handed, Bjugstad right. I got a really funny Bjugstad story I could share with you if you want to. But
absolutely.
I feel like the Blues at best held serve with some hope for the future here, because losing those 19 goals of Bolduc and potentially 25 or 30, man, I don't know. Something's going on here, I think. But if you're ready for that Bjugstad story, I'm ready to lay it on you here if you want to hear this thing.
Hit me with it.
Okay, so we're in training camp for the Florida Panthers. And, he's like 22 maybe, and Bjugstad had some really nice offensive years. He's a pretty early draft pick. Great player in Minnesota growing up. Also, he's about like 6'5", 230, a solid muscle, this guy. Like, we're talking like, if you're lucky, 8% body fat. He's the guy that when you go to the pool as another dude, you go, oh, God. No.
You keep your shirt on?
Exactly. Tarps on territory, right? So we step up, and we're doing body composition in Florida. And they pinch me, and of course, I'm hovered right in that, like, 11, 12 range, which was like, I think I got down to, like, 10 that year. It was acceptable.
Shame on you for being at 10. I think I'm probably at, like, 90.
Yeah, let's call it a 10, right? A casual 10. Well, Bjugstad steps up, and they start pinching this guy. They don't have anything to pinch, mind you, and it registers him as 18%. And when they inputted it all into the computer, and he's losing he's like devastated, and I'm like, something's wrong here, guys. Something's off. And I looked at the screen, and I told him, I'm like, people testing, like, I'm almost 100% sure you put Nick Bjugstad in as a female. And they're like, no way, no chance. Like, they wouldn't accept it that they could have made that mistake, right? So they posted that Nick Bjugstad has like 18% body fat. And every player, like Keith Yandel, just about had a heart attack laughing. He's absolutely roaring laughing. He can't believe his eyes. He's dying. Look at this guy. He's absolutely shredded, 18%. Who did the pinch? Are you kidding me? Well, they go back the next day, and they had him review it. I told the trainers, I'm like, you guys got to review it, because I'm pretty sure that's what I saw. Sure enough, they clicked the checkbox that put Bjugstad in as female.
Oh, my gosh.
And apparently, when you do body fat, that changes the whole composition. Like, it's totally different, male to female, right? With pinches and what you get on it. So for a day and a half, he was absolutely mortified, and then he was angry. Like, it went from sheer terror to pure anger, because he's right on the cusp of having a really good career, which he already had, and he's continued it on since. But oh man, like that's your worst fear. Like, and that happened one year. My stats got flipped with another guy in Arizona, and I was at like 11%. This guy was at 16. And they had it wrong because we were two mixed next to each other. He was, McMillan or whatever. I was McKenna. And I was like, this isn't me, man. So crazy.
That's amazing.
Mike, I mean, you mentioned Bukestad and how he's a big dude. I mean, you mentioned 6'5". I feel like the Blues, with their goal this offseason, wanted to kind of get back to what their identity was back towards when they won the Cup. I mean, size was the big theme of that team, and you look at their roster now since they've put Nick Leddy on waivers and he got claimed by San Jose. They only have one defenseman that's 6 foot or shorter, and that's Justin Falk, and he's right at that 6 foot mark. You've got Bukestad, who's 6'5", can bring a little bit of nastiness to the game, and then along with Suter, who's smaller but is known as a great defensive player. It feels like they're getting back to their old identity.
Seems like it. For a couple of years there was the hope to play a more puck possession game and to play that more up-tempo style, which here's the thing. I think Jim Montgomery has a club that plays a very up-tempo game, but I think he demands that the Blues play in your face and aggressive. And I think that was something that under Chief was an absolute mandate. I don't think Bannister tried to necessarily get away from size, but I do think there was an emphasis on a more finesse or skilled game with the puck. And really what you're seeing, it's always a monkey see, monkey do league. Florida wins 2 straight by bullying teams out of the league. Well, you're seeing size matter again. But even smaller players can play with size and play with grit. They've got to have the right mentality for it.
Mike, going back to the Bolduc trade, because I think you're in the camp of a lot of Blues fans looking at it saying, man, what are they doing? They're traded in what was looking like a future top 6 winger for a guy that we don't even know what he is. Is there a side to that conversation, though, that you look at and you say maybe they're playing the game of this guy turns into what they'd hope, which is very difficult to find in the NHL, a right-shot defenseman who's big and has offense?
It's definitely I won't say a diamond in the rough thing here. I mean, Mayu was a player that had a lot of clout to him, got drugged down by things that he did that, frankly, were absolutely not acceptable in any way, and he paid the toll for it. So he's probably a better prospect than we've seen previously. He's played well in the American League. He's played a handful of games. And Montreal is just absolutely stout on defense at this point, so they had availability to unload. So, yes, I mean, I think you're looking for Justin Falk's replacement here is what's happening. Somebody who can move the puck, somebody who can play on a power play. It's just tough to see Bolduc go, man. I was really becoming a big fan of Bolduc. The way he shoots the puck, he was starting to play edgy and throw his body around a little bit. I think what just stuck in my head here, and again, I've got absolutely zero insight to this whatsoever, but the people that know the player best are the organization that has the player. So this could be 2 ways. Did the Blues think that Bolduc was kind of tapped where he was, or did they just think Mayu was such a good prospect that they needed to grab him even if it cost Bolduc, with the knowledge also that Bolduc would probably cost some money down the road? Did the Blues think that some of their prospects coming through the pipeline are actually going to be better than Bolduc and cost less, or they need that money later? There's just so many factors, but topical doesn't make a whole lot of sense right now.
And Mike, one other thing that the Blues are being kind of connected to right now that I don't know if I fully get is Bowen Byram. Reports are out there that there are teams talking about trading for Bowen Byram or offering him, and the Blues are connected in that market, even though Doug Armstrong came out today and said, hey, right now the roster is set where it's at, but it only takes one phone call to change that. Do you think Bowen Byram would make sense for the Blues at this point based on where they're at with their roster?
Well, you can toss out those comments from Army, right? Well, here's the thing. The roster he's dead on. The roster's set right now. It's 12:46. Oh, here comes, hey, Buffalo's calling. What do you know? It's 12:47. What do you think? So I appreciate that. That's the type of answer that I think as a manager you chuckle on the inside going, well, I guess I have to answer this one.
Joke's on them.
Yeah, I mean, and it's an open joke, but I like Byram, but I'm scared by that player. Just as the number of times he's been hurt, his size doesn't lend itself to being healthy all the time. Like, he's a very skilled player who's been behind a Cale Makar. He's also been behind a couple players in Buffalo that have been ahead of him as well in the blue line. So, I don't know. I mean, the initial ask was Kyrou, right? And that all fell through, it seemed like. Or no, that was the Paterka deal. I apologize. But, I think losing Leddy, the Blues still may be looking at Mayu as he still may be out of the American League, so they still may need a body on D. I don't know, but you got 8 people vying for it right now. If you're going to make a move for Byram, it sure seems like you'd be moving out one of those D on top of it. And how much value is there in does Kessel have value? Man, we want to keep him around, So see what it looks like.
Mike, one more before we talk Macadoodles with you, of course, on the crazy weekend, which is a perfect time to get out to Macadoodles. But I did want to ask you your thoughts on the Pugh Suter signing. Obviously, centermen, I thought were going to be a lot more expensive than what this one was. But when you bring in a guy like that, what does it do for this Blues team?
Well, Suter's somebody who's played a role before, and I think has shown, again, more than what has been seen at times. And that's a factor that I think you see often now with NHL teams, is that you're consistently trying to find more and out of a player that may have not produced it previously. So I really liked Suter, especially those early years that he had with the Red Wings. I thought, man, this is a guy that's really going to play nice. I thought in Vancouver he took some strides last year as well. Obviously, he scored a lot of goals. I just don't see him as a direct replacement for the goal scoring that's been taken. Is he really going to be a second-line center is what we're hoping for with Suter? Is he going to be a third line? Where is he going to slot with the Blues? Because second-line center, guys, you're going to need 60, 80 points out of that position. You're hoping for 80 points. This is a guy who's been kind of a 35, 40-point guy. So I think it's a bit of a hope, but it also could be a bridge. It could also be allowing, again, those Blues young prospects a bit of a buffer zone to give Braden Shen some less minutes, put him on a wing, and let Suter take over down the middle.
Mike, final one for you. We always love talking about what's going on out at Macadoodles. I would imagine with Independence Day weekend, a perfect time for people to get out there and stock up.
Absolutely. I mean, I'll be wearing my Rosé the Day Away tank top and tomorrow for sure.
I need that too, by the way.
Oh, yeah. I'll have the guns blazing, But the biggest thing for us right now is we've got a massive wine blowout going on in the store. We were doing some buy one, get one for $1 deals on some really nice bottle. Lapiche Cabernet is a fantastic bottle. We've got featured on a BOGO right now. Fantastic deals all throughout the wine room. We just got in a barrel pick, a Maker's Mark called Toasted Honey. It is sweet. It's at 111 proof, so it's accessible. It's hot out. Put it on a rock. Put it down. Barrel picks galore. We've also added a ton of Good Boy to our store. Good Boy vodka RTDs, these canned cocktails. We just got the lemonades in last week. They are delicious. They're great poolside. So lots of fun things going on. Come on in. Take a look at our deals online. You can always find them at Macadoodles Darty and Ferrario on Instagram and Facebook, and we'll see you in today. We'll be open until 7 o'clock tomorrow night if you need anything last minute for July 4th.
Yep, and make sure you get my Rosé the Day Away T-shirt ready, because I'll be out there to pick that one up too. Mike, always appreciate catching up, man. Happy 4th of July weekend to you and the family. Enjoy it, and we'll talk next Friday.
Same to you guys. Be safe, everybody. Enjoy the 4th. See you on the flip side.
See you on the flip side, or as Michael Scott says, see you on the flippity flop. With Tanner Hendrickson, Bradford Bruns, I'm Alex Ferrario. We'll take a break. We'll come back, get into the junk drawer here on 101 ESPN.
you the picture, the real big St. Louis sports picture. It's BK and Ferrario on 101 ESPN. Let's open it up. The junk drawer with BK and Ferrario.
All right, because it's Independence Day, we're going to do it. 4th of July draft. Let's go. T-Bone, you're first.
No.
Okay,
no.
T-Bone, what do you got today for the junk drawer?
Guys, I found the top 25 movies on IMDb on their rating system, right?
Okay,
You
I
can
like
rate a movie on a scale of 1 to 10 on IMDb, the app. And I'm curious if you guys can name the top 10 movies of all time.
Of all time? Okay,
Yes.
well, luckily I got Bradford in studio because if this was Grant, I'd be bleeped because Grant doesn't watch movies.
Bit of a story in here.
All right, so top 10 of all time. Okay, so Godfather's got to be one of them.
Godfather is number 2 at a 9.2.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. For some odd reason, which I think this movie is dumb, but what's the black and white film, the Rosebud? Citizen Kane?
Yeah, good
Citizen
one.
Kane's got to be up there.
Citizens Kane is not up here in the top 10.
Thank God, because that one, people always act as if that's the greatest movie ever. I watched it and it was dumb. It was a waste of my
It is
time.
not in the top 25
Okay,
on
good.
IMDb's
Good,
rating
good,
system.
good.
Now,
Okay.
again, this is voted by fans.
Okay,
people,
good.
Not
okay.
critics.
Saving Private Ryan?
Saving Private Ryan is not in the top 10. It is in the top 25 at 24.
Dark Knight?
Dark Knight is not in the... Or,
Wow.
excuse me, yes, it is.
Yeah, that's
It is
got to be in the
third.
top 10.
Sorry,
Gone with the Wind.
Gone with the Wind is not in the top 10.
Casablanca.
Not in the top
Okay, thank
10.
God. See, fans don't like those movies. They like the newer ones. Okay, so Forrest Gump?
Forrest Gump's just on the outside.
Really?
It's at 11.
Yeah, I'm thinking of a lot of... are there animated films in this too, or is this like no anim? There's no Toy Story or anything like
no
that?
No animated films in the
Okay,
side
so-
of the top 10. One of them is older.
Older. Okay.
Really old. Like, might have been even I think it was probably pre-you.
Oh God. Okay.
I'll just give that one to you.
Yeah, just give
The
it to
good,
me.
the bad, and the ugly.
Okay.
Is at number 10.
Clint Eastwood, which
Yeah.
totally makes sense. Oh, man, I'm trying to think of some that would fall into this right now.
I'll make another Christopher Nolan play on the low.
Okay.
How about Memento?
Memento is not in the top 10.
Original Matrix? Trying to judge
yeah,
by
the
the
Matrix.
fan?
Matrix
Is he in here?
16. Close.
Matrix
You guys
16,
are, you
okay.
guys are doing
I was
pretty good
gonna say, I
inside
got
the top 25. Top 10 you're missing, though.
Shawshank Redemption?
Shawshank Redemption is number 1 on
makes sense.
IMDb's
That one
ranking
makes
system
sense.
at 9.3.
That was a really good film. Okay, let's go through. Is Fight Club on here?
Fight Club is on the top 25. It is
Yep.
not in
you
the
don't
top
talk about
10.
Fight Club, but I guess you had to talk about. Okay, I'm gonna go comedies here a little bit. And I don't know if people do this. What about The Hangover?
No comedies in the top 10.
So Ferrario, just please shut up. No
You guys
comedies.
have gotten 1, 2, 3. You're missing one sequel in here.
Sequel, is it Godfather 2?
Godfather Part 2.
Which, in my
is
opinion, is better than
fourth.
the first one, for sure.
You are missing a very well-known movie with Samuel L. Jackson.
Pulp Fiction.
Pulp Fiction.
Pulp Fiction is at
I'm actually
number
upset
8.
with myself that I didn't think of that,
Yeah.
Bradford.
There are two that I don't think you guys would get.
Give me the actor and see if I could get the movie. If you know,
gosh,
he's
I
got to
don't even
Google
know
the
the
actor.
Like this game. Give me the director. I don't care.
It's got to be something in like the 80s, 90s realm. Like that's what I'm
It's
thinking.
in the early 2000s.
Early 2000s. Okay.
It starred Elijah Wood, Ian McKellen.
Lord of the Rings.
There's two. The Lord of the Rings, The Fellowship of
Both
the
of
Ring.
those?
And the Lord of the Ring, The Return of the King are 6 and 9.
Oh, that's ridiculous. Wow. Those should not be on there.
And then there's only 2 more that you guys are missing inside
Give me the
top
actor.
10.
I'm sorry. Let me go on a rant about Lord of the Rings because I'm sure there's people that are going to get really upset with me.
Oh, the Tolkien
I
estate.
think those are terrible films. I think they're boring. I think the acting is not great. And I think the storyline is dumb.
Maybe for the Hobbit films, I could get on board with that. They became a little too self-indulgent. The original trilogy, though, I don't know about
I didn't recognize how old one of these movies was. It's from the 50s.
Oh, okay. Who's in it? Because I'm not going to know
Stars
that.
Henry Fonda, Lee J. Cobb.
This
On
is
Golden Bond?
No.
Oh.
12 Angry Men
I
is
saw some
number
people
5.
I saw some people texting that one. I've never seen that, so I don't know.
And then the last one that you guys have not gotten in the top 10, it comes in at tied for third, but it's seventh on the list. Stars Liam Neeson.
Taken.
No. Ben Kingsley, Ralph.
Is this Airplane?
Oh, goodness.
No, not Airplane.
Wow, Spielberg, Schindler's List.
Schindler's List.
Liam Neeson. That's
comes
Leslie
in
Nielsen.
at number 7.
That would have been a much different movie.
I haven't seen that one since film class in college, so that one's been a while.
The top 10 rated movies on IMDb: The Good, the Bad, the Ugly, Lord of the Rings, The Fellowship of the Ring, Pulp Fiction, Schindler's List, The Lord of the Rings, The Return of the King, 12 Angry Men, The Godfather Part 2, The Dark Knight, The Godfather, and then number 1, The Shawshank Redemption.
Yeah.
That's the top 10 based on ratings on the IMDb.
I'm okay with some of those. Some of those I wouldn't have I would not have 2 Lord of the Rings. If you want 1 Lord of the Rings, that's fine. But like, you got to be Godfather level to have 2 parts. And I mean, both Godfather 1 and 2 are 2 of the greatest films I've ever seen.
Very modern. I'm a little surprised that we didn't take it back somewhat more. I'm thinking about the pugilism, actually. Alex, I'm thinking about some Rocky, maybe Raging Bull. Those films didn't make the cut.
Rocky should have been on there. Like, how is Titanic not on there? It's one of the highest grossing films ever.
Well, this wasn't about how much money they brought
it's
in.
fans. And if it's highest grossing, fans had to have liked Titanic. It's what everyone talks about.
I wouldn't put Titanic as a top 25 movie.
Oh, I absolutely would.
I just thought of one sequel.
Rocky wouldn't be that either.
What the hell?
I'm really surprised this sequel didn't crack top 10, top 20 status. Everybody, universal acclaim, loves Terminator 2.
Yep,
Judgment
Terminator
Day.
should have been up there.
See, I wouldn't put that in my top 25.
Independence Day would have been up there. Django Unchained I would have had on that list. That was a phenomenal film with Jamie Foxx. That list is dumb. I'll say it right now. They should have had a better list on this one. But Tanner, thanks for bringing it to the attention of the
You're welcome.
of the
And
show.
you know what? Deep tease for Monday. I might, unless you blow a finger off with a firework, then that'll be a different junk drawer. But
I promise I won't.
I've got a list of the most downloaded songs on Spotify that we could get into on Monday.
Of all time?
Of all time.
Oh, God, that's going to be a rough guessing one. By the way, Top Gun should have been on that list. Also, Silence of the Lambs should have been on that list.
Top Gun Maverick for the win.
Bradford Bruns, Tanner Hendrickson, I'm Alex Ferrario. Coming up at 15, we'll sing for you because we're going to treat it like a Thursday on top of always treating it like a Friday. We'll do Believe It or Not, but coming up next, how do the Blues now stack up with the rest of the Western Conference? That and does Bowen Byram still make sense? All of it here on 101 ESPN.
The Redbird Report, your front row seat to all things Cardinals. From the dugout to the diamond, BK and T-Bone go deep with the latest news, notes, and analysis. Watch the Redbird Report on YouTube or listen online at 101ESPN.com. WXOS, WXOS HD1 East St. Louis. 101 ESPN is driven by Auto Centers Nissan, home of the lifetime warranty and 30-day return. We're right back to more of it. It's BK and Ferrario on 101 ESPN.
Well, we were going to talk about how the Blues stack up against the Western Conference. Our answer to that to be determined, because there's now a new rumor. By the way, I feel bad for JR. He is in Colorado.
He's on vacation
with his family for his daughter's softball tournament. They were at Red Rock today. And the poor man is probably like, this never stops.
And Army said, there's no vacation for you,
Army
JR.
said, make sure you're available. I think Army's probably doing it out of spite to JR, to where he's like, you're on vacation, get to work. So you missed it in the 3 minutes that we were in a commercial break. Jeremy Rutherford of The Athletic, our Blues insider, just tweeted this. The Blues have been trying hard to get Bowen Byram from Buffalo, according to a league source. There's still a possibility that Byram gets an offer sheet. And he also said, to be clear, the offer sheet could be from another club, not the Blues. But if that happens, that would obviously take the Blues out of the mix. And then I also love this by JR. Just had this one from the waist ready to go. Somebody tweeted him and said, JR, Army said the roster is done. So how believable is this? And JR responded, the roster was done last year before Broberg and Holloway signed their offer sheet. So let's go off of this path, because we were going to get into this as a secondary piece, but now it's the primary. Does Byram still make sense for this Blues team? Like Mike McKenna, just interviewed a little bit ago, said, like, look, it makes you nervous because you're either giving up something off of your roster that's NHL ready, which I don't think you can afford to do that anymore. You can't afford to give up any of your wingers. You're not going to trade any of your centermen. Somebody was talking on Twitter yesterday, and I think it was at Steve Dangle in Toronto, and he was like, oh, the Bukestad and Suter signing, does this mean they're going to trade Braden Shen? I'm like, what are you talking about? They don't have anything off of their forward group that they're going to trade. There's nothing on the defense that you're trading unless it's Falk, and I don't know if Buffalo would want Falk, and I don't know if Falk is going to go to Buffalo. You're not trading your goaltending, so you don't have anything that's NHL ready that Buffalo wants. Could there be a 3-team trade? Maybe, but that means another team would want Justin Falk. If this happens, I think the offer sheet is the most likely path, other than a 3-team trade, which that's hard to speculate right now. But does it make sense for the Blues? Sure. I'm getting another top pair potential defenseman who can play the left or the right side, who is viewed as an offensive defenseman, who is also a big body. The money is what I don't know makes sense, because they're talking like this guy could get $9 to $10 million. And I don't know if he's a $9 to $10 million player. You've got Mayu, who's going to be cheap, who's viewed as a top 4 defenseman. Does it give you the opportunity to make the moves? Sure. Does it make sense? Yeah, it makes you a better team, significantly better in my opinion. Your defense is the best in the Western Conference if you acquire Bowen Byram. I just don't know if it makes sense in terms of how much you're going to pay him and how much you got to give up to get him.
Yeah, it makes me think, first off, when you talk about, like, what is he going to make Bowen Byram, makes me wonder if he's going to come in at less than that number. I mean, you mentioned, what, $9 million there?
Yeah.
I don't know if the Blues are making that move if they think he's signing for $9 million. My gut tells me that it's going to be less than that. Like, it might be in
seven. He just made 7 or 7.5, I believe, his AAV was with Buffalo for 2 years.
If I'm reading this right, his previous cap hit was 3.8.
Okay, so maybe they offered him 7 or 7.5 and he turned it down.
I wonder if he goes for about that number there, 7, 6.5, somewhere in that range. Because I would have thought, okay, well, Suter's not signing with the St. Louis Blues if he's getting 4x5. And what did he get? He got 2 by 4.125.
Yeah.
So I think the reports on the money for Byram might be a little far out there. And it could just be like, hey, here's what Byram's camp is telling Buffalo because it's Buffalo. Who wants to be in Buffalo? True. I think that could be part of this smoke here, because I don't think the Blues would bring in a defenseman making $9 million. Not yet in their life cycle. And for a guy like you said, it's still kind of a little bit of a question mark as to what his true ceiling is. But I think if the Blues are pushing hard for Byram, they are trying to solidify what their top 4 is going to look like for the next 3 to 5 years, right? I don't know if he's top 4 this year because you have Broberg, you have Fowler. But just looking at how they might be trying to position themselves is they picture their top 4 in the future as being Broberg and Byram on the left side, with Parayko and Mayu on the right side. that's probably how they're picturing their top four then, right? Am I missing that as...
Yeah.
And then they can figure out the third pair. Like Tucker could be a nice third pair defenseman. You can always go out there and find a third pair guy on the free agent market.
To me, Tucker's in there no matter what. The question is Mayu on this team? Because he's waivers eligible. You could send him through, or waivers ineligible.
Well, I'm not even talking this year. I'm talking more of like down the road.
Well,
because I think a play for Byram it feels a lot like the Mayu deal, which is, sure, maybe this helps us this year, but this is more about building what the defense is going to look like in the next 2 to 3 years when we get towards our contending window.
Well, and I think if you get Byram, that's to me telling you that Fowler's not going to be here beyond this year. Fowler's probably gone. So then you're talking Byram and Parayko with Broberg and Mayu. I also would believe that Falk's not on this roster if you acquire Byram.
Yeah. And
because your third pair would be a Byram and a Tucker, or it would be Mayu and Tucker still, and Byram would move into that second pair with a Broberg.
Yeah, and I don't like, when I look even further out, because I agree, I think Falk's probably becomes, I guess, a guy that they're trading. I don't know where he's going, but it's probably not Buffalo. I agree, he's probably on the outside, but even like thinking in 3 to 5 years, he's not a guy that plays into their future plans. And that's why like this kind of a move on what they're trying to do for their defense feels very much a planning for the future, not so much about what it looks like in the here and now, because there's a chance like Byram and Mayu, if they're on this roster, have some growing pains here in St. Louis, and you look at it and go, oh boy, what was Army thinking? But it's more of a play on, okay, can we be a team that just becomes this elite, tall, lengthy defensive unit in 2 to 3 years under Jim Montgomery as he gets these guys more in tune with his system?
Go look at the Boston Bruins in Jim Montgomery's first year, the year they won 65 games. Here were the defensemen in terms of what they produced. Hampus Lindholm had 53 points for them. Charlie McAvoy, 52 points for them. Matt Grzelcyk, 75 games, 28 points. Connor Clifton. They acquired Dmitry Orlov, who was a point-per-game player at the deadline, and they had depth pieces as well. Go look at the Dallas Stars when Jim Montgomery was there in 2018, 2019. You had a young Heiskanen, you had a Lindell, you had a Klingberg, you had a Jamie Alexiak. You build rosters off of how the coach wants to have success. And Jim Montgomery loves two-way defensemen. He loves big two-way defensemen that can generate offense from the blue line. Not scoring, but generating offense, keeping pucks alive. That's what they're doing. They're trying to set themselves up to where, man, the future is going to be Broberg, Byram, Parayko, Mayu. Parayko's the oldest one in that group, and Parayko is what, 30 years old with 5 more years at $6.5 million? Like, that's what they're doing. They're setting the core up for success. The real narrative on this one, in my opinion, is what are you giving up for Byram? Because you're either giving up a first and a third-round draft pick next year, which Buffalo is saying they'll match whatever offer is out there. So that means you're going to have to overpay him to make sure that they don't match, which I don't see the Blues doing. Or you're trading something off of your roster to acquire him. People are bringing up, do you trade Texier? Do you trade Joseph? None of those guys are going to get it done because Buffalo is trying to win now. If you're acquiring him, my guess is Buffalo's saying, we want Neighbors, we want Snuggerud, we want Kyrou, we want these pieces. And the Blues aren't doing that for Byram. Doesn't make sense.
I wonder if they would be open to Neighbors. And the reason I bring that up...
Your wing depth is so bad.
For now. They probably look at that, as we've talked about, for both this year. I mean, we've talked about the third-line right wing spot as being a question mark going into this season. But I wonder if they're looking at this saying, okay, can we package Neighbors, maybe a first, whatever it might take, prospects, pick your poison, and say, we can figure out the third-line wing spot, whether it be at the trade deadline this year, we can figure it out as we go into the next offseason. It's a lot easier to replace that wing spot than it is to go out and find good young defensemen on the market. That's where I wonder if Neighbors is the piece that they are considering putting in this package. And again, it's more of the play for future years than it is what it will look like this year. Because, yeah, you're right. They will be pretty thin on the wing spot once you get past the top 6 going into this year if they included Jake Neighbors.
Let's carry over this conversation because I don't believe that makes any sense for the Blues, and I'll explain why. Plus, we'll take a little bit of a look at what other teams could be involved because I do think a 3-team trade would make sense. So let's talk more about the Byram. And if you're just joining us, Jeremy Rutherford reporting that according to a league source, the Blues are heavily involved in these Bo Byram conversations. We'll continue the conversation next year on 101 ESPN.
Get Get social with 101 ESPN. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, X, Threads, Blue Sky, and YouTube at 101 ESPN.
is exactly where you want to be listening to us. It's BK and Ferrario on 101 ESPN.
I know it's going to disappoint some people, but we are going to have to skip Believe It or Not here, but I think it's for good reason, because if you're just joining us, Jeremy Rutherford of The Athletic, putting it out there on X, formerly known as Twitter, that the Blues have been trying hard to acquire Bowen Byram from the Buffalo Sabres. Now, there's the potential for offer sheet. He doesn't believe the Blues are in that camp, but they're looking at the opportunity to acquire this young defenseman from the Buffalo Sabres. You asked the question, could this be Jake Neighbors involved in the trade, T-Bone? And the thing about it for me, and by the way, you're not wrong for asking the question, because if you look at Buffalo, where are they weakest? They have no wingers that can score. So they're looking to add offense from the wing. You don't have a lot of those. Kyrou now has a no trade. Buchnevich has a no trade. The guys that don't have that protection are Jake Neighbors and Jimmy Snuggerud, and those would be the ones I would say are probably at the highest level of interest for Buffalo. Could there be a 3-team trade? Maybe, but that's a lot harder to come to fruition, and there's no way you could speculate that. The reason I don't know if Jake Neighbors should be a part of that trade is now you are getting really weak in terms of the winger. I know you've added Bukestad, and maybe you think Bukestad can perform the way that Jake Neighbors does, but I was listening to the Ray and Dregs podcast yesterday, Ray Ferraro and Darren Dreger, and they were talking about how they had such a young nucleus of guys who could fly up the ice. And he said Neighbors, Bolduc, Snuggerud, Kyrou, Holloway. I know you're trying to go for size and defense if you're doing a trade like this to acquire a Byram, but you are losing some of that heaviness that you're hoping to still have. Like it or not, the way you win Stanley Cups, if you're going off of copycat, is to have guys who can bully you around at the forward position. And I don't think you have, not that I don't think, you don't have any other guys like Jake Neighbors in your minor league system. I don't care about the production. I'm more the personality. That's where it comes down to it. So could it happen? Sure. Man, I feel like I feel like as you get better, then you get worse again, because you've now gotten rid of two wingers that are supposed to be big pieces for your team moving forward.
Yeah, and like I kind of agree with that, because I like Jake Neighbors. I liked Zach Bolduc. But again, I think it could just be a question of, okay, well, what is going to be easier for us to find? A young, cost-controlled, well, I wouldn't say cost-controlled, because he's going to get paid a pretty penny potentially in Bowen Byram, but what is harder for us to find? This left shot defenseman that can move the puck up the ice, brings offensive upside that can help us from the blue line, or a third line winger to score 20 goals? And I think the Blues' answer to that question would be, well, it's easier to find a third line winger that can score 20 goals. And when you look at it in the short term, like we were talking about this during the commercial break, like I could see where if they're like looking at the here and now, if you traded Neighbors, their response to be okay, so the third line is you've got Suter at center, Bukestad's on a wing along with Texier. And Bukestad can go to the front of the net, maybe score 20 goals like he's done in the past, like you have mentioned to me, hey, this guy can't be a 20-goal scorer. I'm a little more skeptical of it, but maybe the Blues believe he can bounce back to being that guy. And boom, you just replaced Neighbors' production on the wing for Bukestad, who's making $1.75 million. It's not a long-term answer there on that third-line wing. But you mentioned this, I think it was yesterday while we were out at Centene. You look at what teams do in their bottom six all the time. They're always constantly shuffling through their bottom six. Colorado doesn't fix their bottom six until the trade deadline. That's when they really go in and fix what they're doing in the bottom half of their lineup. So it makes me wonder if that's what the Blues are doing. And again, that's just speculation. I don't know if Neighbors is actually on the trade block or not.
Yeah.
But he's the most NHL-ready piece that they've got that I would think that they would be willing to part with.
Yeah. Part of me really wonders if this is just them saying, like, look, we want Byram, and we'll give you Falk. And then it's just a matter of, are they willing to take it? And then you go to, because they always go to the player after the trade is put together. They don't go to the player and say, hey, we're going to trade you, because that nixes everything. They get the deal done, and then they go to the player and they try and convince him otherwise. But I just like, if you're the Buffalo, do you take a Falk and a Texier or a Joseph to go in there? Then it's the offer sheet side of it. Like, I do believe that you could consider the offer sheet side of it, but then you also talk about the potential of matching. Like, this is the part that's just so wild for me. if they're aggressively pursuing. And some of this just might be, look, Byram has shown interest in wanting to be in St. Louis. St. Louis has said, cool, let's try and acquire him. And they can't get a deal done. And they say, well, we're fine with our roster as is. I just don't believe they're going to go to Buffalo and say, what do you want for Byram? Because Byram's not that type of player. A lot of people are bringing up that you shouldn't have traded Bolduc for Mayu. I would imagine if they've been this interested in Byram for a while, they probably talked Bolduc, and Buffalo said, nope, that's not good enough for us. Buffalo wants a guy that helps them now. And that's why it's like, I don't even know if Neighbors is that in their opinion. Maybe it's just Kyrou or a Buchnevich. And this is where it just gets really weird. But other side of this coin, back to the Byram stuff, I think it really does show you Doug Armstrong is trying to make his team elite on defense so that basically you can say, we're done. We don't need to worry about defense. Steen, when you take over, the only thing you need to do is tweak and fiddle some knobs on the forward position, and then you got yourself a team because I'm giving you a defense in place. Your defense is a Broberg, Byram, Mayu, Parayko. That's something that you can say we're building around this.
Yeah, I think this kind of move, if they're doing it, is more about for when Steen takes over. To your point of, hey, now you've got the top four figured out for the long run, and your top four with Parayko, Mayu, Broberg, and then Byram if you end up making the move. Because to me, Byram is not so much a move of the now, winning in the here and now, because whatever they have to give up might be a piece that impacts the NHL roster. And it's just clear at this point they're ready to move on. I believe if they're making these kind of moves, if they're pushing hard for Byram, I don't think Falk's going to Buffalo. It makes me think they might have a trade partner for Justin Falk, though. And because I mean, like,
and that's the three-team trade coming into this.
Yeah, if they're gonna call Buffalo and say we're offering Falk, Army might as well just save the phone call because Falk's not going to Buffalo. I wouldn't think. I can't imagine that that's the NHL-ready piece that they want. I would think they're going to want young, cost-control pieces that they can make a move in. And again, I don't think the Blues are moving a Snuggerud. I wonder if they've got the pieces to make this happen, but I totally agree with you. This is more of a, hey, Steen, your defense is set. Maybe you got to tweak the third pair every now and then. Maybe you got to go out and try and find marginal upgrades on the third line or fourth line, but you've got your core set in place in your top six. You've got your core set in your top four, and you pretty much got a minimum one of your goalies. If Hofer's that guy in 2 years in place already,
yeah,
you're set up pretty well. If you're Alexander Steen, it will become more of the small marginal upgrades for him to make moves when they are ready to contend. And I mean, you couldn't ask for a better thing if you're a Blues fan. I wouldn't think for Doug Armstrong to leave and say, "Hey, you know what? Here's what you have. You are in a pretty good spot, Steen. Now go out and make your mark on the team."
And this could also come down to Buffalo realizing that, look, we're not going to get what we believe is worth Bo Byram. Yes, they've used the threat of nobody's going to offer sheet him because we'll match that offer. Teams aren't willing to pay the price to what Buffalo is asking. So then you go down a little bit. And when you go down a little bit, you go to the teams and you say, what's your next best offer? That's where it could be, okay, well, we've got the closest ready prospects. Because look at the other teams that were reported to be in on this. Vegas doesn't have anybody in the pipeline that they could trade for this one. I believe Colorado's name was attached to that.
According to the fourth period, David Pagnotta, friend of the show, reported it earlier today. The Kings, Flames, Blues, Ducks, Golden Knights, and Rangers are the teams that have expressed interest in Byram.
Rangers and Ducks would be the ones that I'd say would be the most concerning to you because all those other teams don't have anything in their pipeline, and those other teams have more NHL-ready stuff where they're in contending mode that I don't know if you're going to give up to get Byram.
Ducks could be the team that's the offer sheet threat, right? Because they've got a ton of cap space.
You were right, they are below the cap floor.
Yeah.
They're $4 million below it, and the reports coming out that Mason McTavish from Anaheim, a young centerman for them, is not happy with where the team's at right now. So he could be the piece that goes the other direction. All of this to say, look, is it possible they get Byram? Absolutely. It sounds like they're aggressive in this front. It also sounds like there are other teams that are playing this a lot more aggressive than the Blues, which is why you got the quote from Doug Armstrong of like, look, one phone call could change it, but for right now, we're done with this roster. Tanner Hendricks in Bradford Bruns. I'm Alex Ferrario. If anything new develops, we'll keep you posted. But let's talk Cardinals with Brad Thompson next on 101 ESPN.
101 ESPN is powered by Kaufman Townsley St. Louis's injury lawyers. Call 314-500-5000.
Start your day with the morning after on 101 ESPN. Get in the know first on everything St. Louis sports with Tim McKernan, Doug Vaughn, and Martin Kilcoy. Listen to TMA weekday mornings from 7 to 11 a.m. on 101 ESPN. The morning after is presented by Brown and Crouppen Law Firm. 101 ESPN Sports Center.
Cards get a breather before fireworks erupt at Wrigley. I'm Bradford Bruns. Your Sports Center update is driven by Johnny Londoff Chevrolet and Johnny Londoff Autoplex. After getting swept by last place Pittsburgh, the Cardinals are idle today. Tomorrow, however, brings 2025's first trip to West Addison Street. Redbirds Cubs series opener set for 1:20 p.m. on July 4th. Right now, round 3 of Blues development camp winding down. First round selection Justin Carbonneau has turned heads thus far. Plus, he's not shy about delivering some physicality.
Yes, I can shoot the puck and, make plays, but it's all about, not being scared, go to the net, and, sometimes it hurts, but it counts. It counts, and it's where it's important. So, like a little running back mentality, it's you don't always run from the outside. You have to run inside sometimes, and it pays. So, yeah, that's how I play.
That full conversation featuring Alex as well as BK available online. This Sports Center update was driven by Johnny Londoff Chevrolet plus Johnny Londoff Autoplex. See them at Londoff.com. Chevy, together we drive. Are you kidding me?
They are St. Louis. It's BK and Ferrario on 101 ESPN. We're hanging with Brad Thompson on 101 ESPN.
Hanging breaking ball from Brad Thompson. And boy, does he get a swing on it. Lift and separate and see you later.
Hanging with BT is sponsored by St. Luke's, ranked top 2% in the nation for cardiac surgery by Health Grades. Visit stlukes-stl.com.
No better way to head into the weekend and to talk Cardinals baseball as they get set to take on the Chicago Cubs with our favorite TV analyst for the Cardinals. He is Brad Thompson. BT, how are you, buddy?
Gentlemen, I am doing great. How are you guys doing today?
Much better than I'm sure the Cardinals were over the last couple of days. But I got to imagine, BT, this was a much-needed day off for those guys to where they could just stop thinking about baseball for a couple of hours.
Yeah, it's not even like thinking about it. It's just playing it and posting every single day. I think that it was 28 games in 29 days, something like that they just got done with, right? So it's a ridiculous stretch that they've been on. And the group's definitely worn down, right? No excuse. You still got to play the games. You got to play your schedule. It was a interesting, to say the least, road trip. You sweep the Guardians in Cleveland, and then you don't score a run in Pittsburgh in historic fashion. That hadn't happened since 1976 or something like that, where they've gone that long against a division foe and not scored. So not exactly the way that they wrote it up after winning 3 in a row, but a much-needed reset for these guys and a big push at the end, right? The All-Star break is coming up, and this is where you really have to dig deep because you know that there are plenty of teams out there that may be already planning their schedule, and their families are saying, hey, when are we getting the Airbnb? Are we flying first class? Are we doing the Bahamas? You can't think about any of that crap, right? Like, you got to go pedal to the metal right now. So it's going to be a bit of a push here, obviously, in Chicago, and then the series at home before the All-Star break against the Nationals and the Braves.
BT, what do you make of the offensive swings for the Cardinals to where when they win, they're scoring a bunch of runs, but when they lose right now, you mentioned they get shut out 3 straight games in Pittsburgh. I looked this up this morning. They have scored 1 or fewer runs in 22 of the first 88 games this season. For context, they did that 24 times all of last season. So what do you make of this weird inconsistency from the Cardinals?
Yeah, and on the flip side, to your point, T-Bone, I don't have the numbers in front of me. I don't know if you do either, but I bet they've scored 5 or more a hell of a lot more times than they did last year. It's just kind of been one of those all-or-nothings, and I think that you're going to get some of that. Right now, not having 3 of your best right-handed bats, that bit you over the weekend. Herrera not being there hurts a ton. I mean, he is arguably your best right-handed bat when he's healthy. Not having Contreras, not having Arenado, that hurts. And then you got some guys that during this stretch especially I think are banged up and playing through it. You look at a guy like Alec Burleson. Burley's not used to playing every day, especially out in the outfield running like he is every single day. I think he needs a blow every once in a while. So you're going to have inconsistencies anyhow with a young club. Then you add in some of the injuries and just the lineup being a little bit different. I feel like you're gonna have some of those. But you're right, it is kind of a feast or famine. You got a couple of guys in Michaelis and Fetty. You look at some of their run support when they're out there, it ain't great. When those guys are out there, that makes it tough as well. But I just feel like you're gonna ride waves with this club. I feel like anytime, especially when you have a young offense, you're gonna have some of these ebbs and flows, and sometimes you come in with a game plan, you just can't execute it. Certainly was the case over the weekend.
BT, I think for a lot of Cardinals fans, when they see a lineup struggling like the Cardinals have as of late, their initial reaction is, you got to juggle up the lineup. You got to take this guy out of the leadoff spot, put this guy at the leadoff spot. It doesn't seem like the Cardinals are in that position right now with the unavailable state of a couple of their right-handed bats. And for, like you just mentioned, some of these guys are just in a slump. It just kind of feels like they're in a spot where they have to push forward with what they have.
Yeah, I totally agree. Look, you could shake it up for the sake of shaking it up, but what really makes sense? I mean, who do you want off the top right now more than Donovan? I know Donnie has been on a rough patch here in the last week and a half, but yeah, I'm not going to put Newt back there yet. I don't think that his swing is ready to be there. I'm certainly not going to put Victor Scott there off the top right now. So I don't know what better answer that you really have. Sometimes when I've done this playing poker before, no matter what shape I put my hand in and where I put the cards, it ends up being the same hand, right? So it ends up just how you play it, right? And how these guys play. This offense has proven that they're a top 10 offense in baseball, and the numbers bear that out for the season. Last couple of weeks have been a little bit cooler just in your overall numbers, but this team, if they're gonna make a push, it's going to have to be because the offense is able to carry them through some of these times, and it's just disappointing over a weekend like that against the Pirates, who've been playing some really good baseball under Don Kelly. It's disappointing when you waste a couple of really good pitching performances. Palante was fantastic. I mean, the guy was as good as he could be. And I know that Sonny's line, he ends up giving up 4. He pitched a hell of a lot better than that. I know you guys watched. It was a better performance than what the overall number looked like. So those are the ones that bite you a little bit. Those are disappointing. But, yeah, shuffling up the lineup, you only have so many pieces. And without Herrera, who's a huge linchpin, you hope that you're able to get him back on the lower end of the scale with his hamstring injury. You hope that Contreras is good to go by tomorrow. Arenado's finger is good. Then you feel a little bit better about where you're at offensively.
BT, you mentioned earlier when I asked you about the offense and its swings, like they're missing Herrera, and that's a big part of this. And I'm 100% with you. And it got me and BK thinking when we did our latest episode of the Redbird Report, who are the most irreplaceable Cardinals right now? Who would you say the top 3 are for the Cardinals as they are constructed right now?
So do we include Herrera in this since he's on the IL? All right, yeah, I'm going to put him in there because I think he's your best right-handed bat. I go Donovan also, and we'll go just totally non-pitching on this one. I would go Donovan, Herrera, and then, God, are we just doing offensively or just in general?
In general.
Pages is my other one. That's number 3. And obviously not for what he brings offensively, but I think that if you don't have Pedro Pages this year, I think your record looks more like the Pirates than it does where it's at right now. I think he means that much to the ball club. Where are you guys at? Where are your top 3?
So I had Herrera in my top 3. I had him at number 1 for the time being because of what the offense has looked like. And then I had Donovan in there as well. And Burley was
Burley.
Yep. Burley was the other one for me.
Those were my 3.
Yep.
I had on the outside looking in. I loved what you said about Pages because I really considered. I think these 3 kind of fall a little bit in line for what the identity of the Cardinals is, and I had them on the outside looking in. Pages, Wynn, and Scott because of what they bring. Both from not Pages offensively, but from the defensive perspective, what they provide. I mean, you mentioned how important Pages is behind the plate. Mason Wynn is a Gold Glove caliber shortstop that's been really good since moved to the 2. I think he's got an OPS of 800 in the 2 spot this year. And then Victor Scott II quietly has a really good on base that's kind of right in line with where Lars Nootbaar is. And he's got 20 stolen bases so far this year and plays Gold Glove level defense. So those 3 for me were just on the fringe on the outside looking in.
Yeah, I don't think there's anything wrong with that list right there. Now what we need is, and I hated leaving Burley out, but that's how much I think that Pajas means to this team overall, like this pitching staff. Just in general, I'm not sure that he gets enough love. We focus oftentimes on, did the pitcher have a good day? Offensively, what did you do? Sometimes we forget about the game caller and what is going on back there, and he really is next level. And you talk to anybody in the organization, they freaking love him. Obviously, Sonny, after his gem when he had his shutout in Cleveland, brought him out with him and wasn't going to talk to the media until he was there by the side. So that's an important one. Can't say enough about the job that Burley has done. This guy is not only doing it offensively, he's doing it defensively everywhere you put him. Right now, I think that they're just in a worn-down phase, and I hope that today is a great rest day for them because there is no rest for the weary. I mean, you got the Cubs. You're still trying to nip at their heels. It's going to be an electric weekend out there at Wrigley, and I know these guys are going to be ready. Hopefully the pitching continues to give them a chance, and then the offense can roll, especially in that ballpark. You never know what the wind's going to be doing. The ball flies. It's going to be an entertaining one.
BT, final one for you, man, and we appreciate you always hopping on with us. We had this conversation a little bit earlier, and I know it's really early still in the season in terms of the playoff spots, but do you feel like the NL Central is the best path for a playoff spot, or is it more the NL wild card for this Cardinals team?
You know what? I think that both are in play. I really do. I mean, you look at the standings right now. The Cardinals are still in the thick of things in general, both in the wild card and in the division. So it's going to be tough to say which one is going to be more in play. I do know. Obviously, you win your division, you feel a hell of a lot better about things when that happens. I don't think that the Cubs, even though as good as they are, I still don't think that they're going to totally pull away. I don't think the Brewers have the firepower to pull away, but I've said that for 5 freaking years, and they just keep doing it. But yeah, I mean, you guys know where the wild card is. It's bunched up right now. You got Mets, Brewers, Padres, Cardinals, Giants, the Reds. I mean, you got so many teams that are there. So it's going to be whether it be the division, whether it be the wild card. What my hope is for this club, and I think that a lot of people would agree with this, especially with the overall expectations on the outside looking in coming into the season. I hope that there is a push down the stretch where all of these games mean something, whether it is for the wild card or whether it is for the division, because there's no better thing than a push at the end of it to make the postseason.
BT, man, we always love talking baseball with you, man. Enjoy the holiday weekend. Enjoy Cubs action, and we'll talk to you next Friday.
All right, you guys, too. I want to make sure you have all your fingers when you come back, all right? Be safe out there.
Yep, all the fingers, and just don't stand over any lit fireworks. That's the best advice that we can give you. Have fun, BT.
That's right.
Tanner Hendrickson, Bradford Bruns. I'm Alex Ferrario. We'll come back and we'll rewind it. Talk about this Cubs series this weekend, and also get back to the Blues before we close it down here for the week on BK and Ferrario on 101 ESPN.
This Saturday, Mets and Yankees. Pregame at 2:30. First pitch at 3:10. The MLB plays on 101 ESPN. Giving you the picture, the real big St. Louis sports picture. It's BK and Ferrario on 101 ESPN. Let's run it back with a daily rewind on BK and Ferrario. Brought to you by Gloria Lou, your home sold guaranteed realty. Selling your home begins at GloriaHasTheBuyers.com.
Hey, we are having your shot at winning Adam Sandler tickets in just a bit. Adam Sandler ticket giveaway. 101 ESPN has your shot to score 2 tickets to Adam Sandler on a Friday, October 17th, over at Enterprise Center. The tickets for Adam Sandler are on sale now. You can find all the details and a bonus chance to win free tickets to the show right now at 101ESPN.com or over on the 101 ESPN mobile app. Earlier today on the Junk Drawer, T-Bone had a list of the 25 best movies voted by viewers, fans. What was the number 1 movie on T-Bone's list? If you can tell us that and be Texter 101, you will win those Adam Sandler tickets. Again, the number 1 movie from T-Bone's list on the Junk Drawer. Tell us that name of the movie and number 101 Texter, and you will have those Adam Sandler tickets. As we shut it down here on the Rewind, let's go back through a couple of big topics, which, by the way, if you miss anything from our show today or this week, you can go back and listen to them over on our podcast page, 101ESPN.com, which is presented by Schaefer Door Company. You could check them out on the 101 easy-to-use app, which is presented by Dobbs Tire and Auto Centers, or over on our YouTube channel at 101 ESPN STL. Our studio cams brought to you by Air Alliance Team. And also, by the way, there's a new episode of the Redbird Report, T-Bone and BK, talking Cardinals baseball. You could check that out. And there's also 2 new episodes of the Last Minute Blues podcast, because we did one yesterday, and then, of course, Doug made more moves. We did one today, and
there might be one on the 4th if there's moves?
When the Bowen Byram thing happens,
Okay,
there'll be more fireworks on Independence Day, and it'll probably just be me in studio by myself, because I won't bother JR or Donnie. So you can check all of that out over on our podcast page, 101ESPN.com. Mike Ryder does an incredible job making sure everything is up there looking good for you and easy to find. All right, let's rewind it. Let's start with the Cardinals, carrying over the conversation that we had with BT, and then we'll get to the Blues, because I know a lot of people are talking about this Byram stuff. T-Bone, regardless of where you think the Cardinals team is going to end up this season, what's going to happen at the trade deadline, this series over the weekend doesn't make or break you. But in my opinion, the front office is watching this team with keen eyes. And if they're a roller coaster team, that's great. But if you lose to the Cubs on top of splitting the series against the Cubs and your offense still struggles, they're going to be looking at this saying, man, I just don't know what this team is right now.
Yeah, I think this is the series that can determine if the NL Central still in reach for the Cardinals. You drop 2 or 3, all of a sudden you're 6 games back. It's going to be a lot harder to maybe convince yourself of that, but you're still in the wild card picture. But to your point, like, July is the month, right? They are not determined if they are buyers or sellers yet. We from the outside might believe they're buyers. I think they should personally be buyers at the trade deadline, unless something really goes south here. But it is not determined yet for the St. Louis Cardinals. I think that they are looking at this team and seeing, okay, can they continue this, or are they going to go through another July swoon like it was in the first month of the season? And if they do, then they will sell off pieces. We'll see what they look like. You know, hopefully they get Arenado back, Contreras back, and then the lineup gets to lengthen out a little bit more. You feel a little bit better about it. But they need their left-handed bats to get going again, right?
Yeah.
They need somebody outside of Alec Burleson going against 2 righties in this series. You need the lefty bats to really pick things up.
Yeah, and you got Michaelis on the mound, and as BT mentioned with us, you just need that run support for some of these guys that are on the mound. Okay, on the other side, the Blues, we opened up the show talking about, Nick Leddy being claimed by the San Jose Sharks, which opens up a ton of money for the Blues, which is giving them cap flexibility now and even more cap flexibility once LTIR kicks in for Torrey Krug, once the season picks up. And then that all shifted from the Suter signing on top of Leddy being claimed to the rumor that Jeremy Rutherford put out there, I should say report, that the Blues are very aggressive in trying to acquire Bowen Byram. Now, the important part, and I tweeted this out, you have to read JR's secondary tweet that said, to be clear, the offer sheet that could come from another club is not going to be from the Blues. He does not believe that the Blues are the offer sheet team. If there's an offer sheet team, it would be a Blues acquiring him in a trade. If they can get him, T-Bone, it makes you dominant on defense. I just don't know if you have the pieces to acquire Bo Byram from the Buffalo Sabres, unless Buffalo is willing to lower their expectations on return.
Yeah, that's the tough part. Is it's hard to figure out what the Blues would be giving up in this kind of a move, because Buffalo is reportedly wanting pieces that are NHL ready that can help them now. And the best piece you probably had for that was Zach Bolduc, and you moved him to Montreal to try and improve your defense. So it makes me wonder if, okay, would they have an interest in a Jake Neighbors? He's probably the only NHL piece that's ready right now that could potentially help them.
Yeah.
But to your point, it makes you weaker now on the wing. But the Blues might be saying, you know what, we'll be weaker now on that third-line wing. We can figure that out as we go along. But we want our top four defense for the next couple of years to be set for when Alexander Steen takes over, to where you'd have Mayu and Parayko on the right side, along with Broberg and Byram on the left side. Yeah. So that might be the way the Blues are operating and why they want to try and make a Byram deal happen. I'm
going to be fascinated to see if it happens and what the Blues would have to offer. There's teams that have more to offer, in my opinion, or can offer Sheet him that has better opportunities, but maybe Byram prefers St. Louis, and that's really what this comes down to. By the way, we just got some news around the NHL. Nikolai Ehlers is signing with the Carolina Hurricanes. I mentioned to you in the break, welcome to the team that could unseat Florida if they want to. I mean, Carolina is stacked right now with Nikolai Ehlers. I wonder what trade ramifications come from this now the teams that missed out on Ehlers. Does that kind of expedite a Bo Byram trade? Here's the other thing. We didn't get into this. We'll get into this on Monday. Dude, look around the Western Conference. The Blues have had the best offseason of anybody in the Western Conference, and in my opinion, they significantly got closer to that 6th spot in the Western Conference and further away from the 10 spot that Doug Armstrong talked about last week. With Ehlers off of Winnipeg, I'm not sure if there's another team that's had a better offseason in the West than St. Louis.
And speaking of Doug Armstrong, he'll be on the fast lane coming up at 2:15 today, so be sure to tune into that, see what Army has to say. Maybe he's kidding about the whole, the roster's complete.
Maybe he's going to break some news on that one with the fellas on the fast
lane.
Awesome
if he's like, hey, guys, real quick, I want to interrupt.
Yeah.
We acquired
Ding, ding, ding. He's going to hit his button saying, Army, move, Army, move. Appreciate everybody being with us. Huge shout out to Bradford Brunn stepping in for BK. Again, if you missed it, check it out on our podcast page, 101ESPN.com, or over on our YouTube channel at 101ESPN STL. Please be safe this weekend. Don't be dumb. Just get rid of the fireworks before they blow up on your hand. And we look forward to talking to you on Monday. Potentially more Blues moves right here on BK and Ferrario.
You can now watch 101 ESPN live on our Air Alliance Team Studio Cams. Catch every show live on our YouTube channel or at 101ESPN.com. 101 ESPN Studio Cams.
Presented by the Air Alliance Team Heating and Cooling. Getting the job done quickly, correctly, 100% of the time.